I talk about disruption, not automation or replacement or something. You got to look at it in a broader picture, because it's not necessarily going to be jobs disappearing or what. Because if you just look at it like that, like it's 1 or 0, then you're going to think, okay, this job, there's some things I do that cannot be automated. So, screw that. I'm safe. But actually, no, there could be many different things that could happen. I wanted to myself find books that kind of explain, okay, what are you supposed to do? What can you do as an employee? Because it's really nice, seeing all these people, talking about the problem. And some of them, they write entire books talking about the problem. I'm like, great, but then what's the solution? And when you look at it, all of the solutions that are out there are more targeting governments. My main problem was that this is great, but it's not something that the average Joe can implement. I searched at length for a book that really focuses on this, and I couldn't find anything. That was like a shocking moment to me when I realized that there was nothing written on this topic. When I hear like these people, I read in a book saying like, yeah, the AI is not ready to take the manager's seat or something. It's like, yeah, I agree. But the problem is, 70% of the people, they don't occupy the manager's seat right now. That's the people that I'm concerned about. So my book is not targeting the leaders and what, because there's already a lot of books out there that target them, that tell them like, how do you harness big data? How do you use AI for your, do your digital strategy and everything? There's a lot of books on that. I'm targeting the employee.
Ash, man, it's been a long time.
It has been a long time since I haven't been on the show, right?
Oh, it's been a long time since we just even seen each other.
Yeah, well, there was a bit of a few lockdowns here and there. And,
But even before that, it was like a long time, right?
But we've known each other for a while now, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see some familiar faces in town, I have to say that, especially with all the departures and stuff going on, and a lot of fresh arrivals coming in, but it's nice to, be able to see the good old faces,
Yeah. How you been?
That was good. Doing very great. Got a lot of projects going on, different things rolling, and that really keeping me busy. So it's quite interesting. It's I feel like I'm going through this, even like a new phase or what. So it's very energizing and reinvigorating and things.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I didn't even know. I mean, obviously, I want like Howie especially is going to be very interested in kind of your expertise on the subject of AI. But I had no idea you were even into that stuff. Like, I've known you for a long time, and I had no idea. And then all of a sudden, I learned about this book you wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, the AI Battle Royale, How to Protect Your Job from Disruption in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's important because the words are very important. I talk about disruption, not automation or replacement or something. You got to look at it in a broader picture, because it's not necessarily going to be jobs disappearing or what. Because if you just look at it like that, like it's 1 or 0, then you're going to think, okay, this job, there's some things I do that cannot be automated. So, screw that. I'm safe. But actually, no, there could be many different things that could happen.
Yeah.
Part of it could be outsourced. Part of it could be, it could just change in the nature there, where you have 10 people today, maybe you only need 7 people later, or maybe you only need 4 people later. So there could still be jobs, but just less than we have right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think oftentimes, at least from like non-experts like myself, when we think about it from the outside, we did think of it very binary, right? Oh, either it's black or white, this is going to happen. But the possibilities really are on a spectrum, like you're saying.
Well, take for instance, people at the cashier in a grocery store. When you look at some old science fiction, even recent science fiction series or movies or what, they would have it with a robot replacing the cashier and, putting the stuff in the bag and everything for you. I think I even saw one recently, was like a Baxter robot doing this. But in reality, what happened is you just have the QR scan code, and then it's for the consumer, the purchaser himself, to put the stuff in the bag and everything, because that's the hard part, is putting the things in the bag. That's your dexterous action that you have to do there. And so yeah, they just handed that task over to the consumer. So now it's for us to have to do that. And as a result, the cashier has been automated. Now, not all of them have been automated, because you could still have a little problem with the QR code that doesn't work or something, a problem with, the barcode scan or on a discount or something. But there were maybe, before you had 10 cashiers, now there's only 3 cashiers left for those who still, want to go through it the old way.
Well, okay. From a personal, individual level, what do you think of those like automated cashiers at the grocery stores? Because I feel like there's like 2 camps. Like, some people are like, just don't like it because they feel like they have to do all the work themselves now. And from like a corporate level, you know, from in terms of like job displacement, all that, blah, 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 right? And then on the other hand, it can move things along pretty quick if you get the hang of it. It seems like a pretty cool way to do things. I walk into the convenience store now. I don't have to deal with anybody. I can just grab something, scan it, and go, and be on my way. There's no lines.
Yes, and it's going to keep on. It's going to keep on improving. I mean, this is just one stage of the thing, but it will keep on improving in the direction of really frictionless transaction. You know, so you can just make it the most simple for people. That's really the trend. And you see this at airports, but it's not really working that well. And people are a bit more anxious when they're at the airport and stuff. So they still keep people there. But little by little, this is the direction that things will go in. So when I was saying, like, don't just think about automation by a robot or something, you have to think about part of the task being outsourced. Outsourcing doesn't mean it goes to China or wherever. It could also just mean, well, it goes to the customer. You know, it's for the customer to do this themselves. You know, if you look at a Sephora store, for instance, so, you know, I used to work in Sephora. We still have currently beauty assistants, who are the people that serve you in the shop, and you have this in all types of retail stores. But now you have another model which is emerging, like you have with the Harmé stores, where there is no one inside the shop there to help you and to assist you to buy products. You're free to roam as you wish through the aisles. You can take photos of the products. You can do your own research with your smartphone, and you do your own education. And people that go there, they're usually educated by a handful of KOLs who tell them, like, okay, what is the kind of product that they like or something. And there's no more, you know, there's no more people working in the retail there in this case. So this
is this in Shanghai you're talking about?
Yeah, this is in Shanghai.
So wait, we're talking about the Hermès store?
Harmé, yeah. They have like a few shops. There's one on Anfuru, one in Xintiandi, right?
So they don't have any employees working in the retail stores?
They don't have people that are there to assist. They don't have anyone following you down the aisles with a little bag and everything, like telling you buy this and buy that and things like this. Yeah, there's no salespeople in there. They just have someone at the cashier or something, right? But
I see.
They really decreased on the staff in this shop. So this is another case where maybe your company isn't doing this, but another company comes up and does this. And so your company can be in danger because they're able to do this and keep costs lower and then sell the product at a cheaper price. Or you're at the risk of your company being disrupted by a competitor. So either your company has to automate its own staff, and then you at the risk of your job being disrupted, or they get taken over by these rivals that are, you know, leaner in the sense. So that's more like a case of corporate disruption. So when you hear people talking about these different, they have these debates about, you know, is AI going to change things? And, oh, but before we've seen this play out and there's new sectors that emerge and everything, they're talking about different concepts. The concept of new sectors coming out that replace old ones, or existing sectors that just boom beyond, you know, like the sector for elderly health care, for tourism, things like this. These existed before, but they could have the potential to grow bigger. That's more a case of sectorial disruption. Like, okay, yeah, we had the horse replaced by the car and stuff like that. But here with the case that we're seeing with AI is more about, no matter what the sector is, or even in a sector that is doing very well, the CEO can just show up and say, okay, you know, we had a great results last year and everything, but guess what? Anyways, we're going to decide to cut off half of our accountants or half of our marketing team because we simply are able to achieve the same objective now with less people. So
is that already happening?
These things happen in companies. Yeah.
What okay, so just from a macro perspective, and I'm probably oversimplifying the whole concept and dumbing it down a little bit, forgive me. But, you know, if we just back up a little bit, as far as I know, and I haven't done much research on AI, to be honest, Howie's really the one that's been going down the rabbit hole. And from everything that I'm hearing, from the things you can see online, the thought leaders in this industry that are talking about it, it seems like basically it's being split into two camps of thought. One camp is like they're the doomsayers. They're like, AI is eventually going to kill us. We have no idea what we're opening. This is Pandora's box. We need regulations. We need to stop, you know, halt development right now until we can get our minds around this thing. Like this thing could really end us. And then I feel like there's another school of thought that's, I don't hear as much, but I know they're out there. They're saying, look, this is a tool for humanity. This is something that can really push us forward. These things have happened before. You know, great technologies that change the game and change the paradigm have come before, and we've always been able to implement them in our society and move progress along. where are you on the spectrum?
Well, first of all, I want to like take the opportunity to kind of, like you say, backtrack, because you asked me how I got into this to begin with. And so I started maybe like a decade ago. I always like reading stuff, and I was more interested in history for a long time. And at some stage, I don't know, my interest started turning towards the future, and I started devouring a lot of books about the future. You know, the industries of the future, the fourth industrial revolution, all these. You know, there's been a big trend since the past decade of these things coming out, and in all of these books, I noticed that they all mention the fragility of the job market in a short-term, mid-term future, and there was like a consensus amongst all the experts that there's going to be a tough job here to retrain the workforce. So I wanted to myself find books that kind of explain, okay, what are you supposed to do? What can you do as an employee? Because it's really nice, seeing all these people, talking about the problem. And some of them, they write entire books talking about the problem. Like if you look at Martin Ford and The Rise of the Robots, he spends a lot of time explaining and trying to convince the audience of the problem. I'm like, great, but then what's the solution? And when you look at it, all of the solutions that are out there are more targeting governments, saying things like, oh, we need to do, universal basic income, or some form of that, negative income tax, or, taxing more on the rich to redistribute the wealth and things like that. And first of all, I'm a bit skeptical of those solutions because I don't think that they can work everywhere. I mean, that's great. You talk about this for the US or something, what about Sudan, or what about, Morocco or Vietnam or what? I mean, it's not something you can implement everywhere. And anyways, there's a lot of issues that come with these solutions. But my main problem was that this is great, but it's not something that the average Joe can implement. So I wanted to know, what can we do as workers, as employees in a company, as mid-level managers, as office workers, as production workers, whatever. No matter where you are, what can you do as a person to improve your chances? And so I searched at length for a book that really focuses on this, and I couldn't find anything. And I found that was like a shocking moment to me when I realized that there was nothing written on this topic. And so I started, really researching it. And at the time, I was already kind of preparing, writing something, and I always wanted to write something. And so I started with an article here, an article there, and I just thought, this is really an interesting topic that I was already immersed in, that I really wanted to plunge through and get out, And I thought, like, there's something really valuable lesson that can be learned here that I could spread out to people to help them to prepare. And this was something like 5-6 years ago. And so that's really when I started going out, to write a book. And then, I met this publisher and everything. So they helped me out with this. And that's when, so I got the book that came out earlier this year. It was probably the first book, actually, that came out that, mentioning ChatGPT and everything, because I did include that in there because it came out and I obviously tested it. And I saw the disruptive potential for this. But
earlier iterations of ChatGPT?
Well, when it came out, ChatGPT 3.5, when it came out the end of last year, I was kind of like submitting the revision copy and everything for the book by then. And I included that. It didn't change the fundamentals of everything that I wrote about. It's just like there's a new technology that comes out that's going to accelerate some of the things, but it doesn't change the fundamentals. And but it was something interesting that you do have to mention in there, or else people see the book, okay, this is pre-ChatGPT, it's trash now, But yeah, so that was like what kind of got me into that. And I think part of my background also, because I was finance controller for a long time. So I was challenged both with, my task was basically reducing costs and making processes more efficient and automating on the one hand. In factories in France that were like going towards the brink of bankruptcy that you had to redress in a very short period of time. So I really had to make some quick decisions there and analyze things and see where you can cut costs. And then coming to China, where it's a booming market. Year-on-year sales at the time were expanding by 70%, whether I was in the factory, whether later on I was working at the Sephora stores. And so there was more like, okay, you have like today we have 20 stores. Within 2-3 years, we're going to have 100 stores. How do you cope with that when you need to do the statistics, produce the profit and loss sheet for each store and everything? How can you're expanding 70% year on year, but we're not adding staff 70%, year on year. So you have to be able you challenge yourself to make your own processes more efficient and to automate and things like that, using coding and things like this. So that's where I really got into this on a personal level. And at the same time, I saw some other areas some industries where they had like so much space for making things simpler with less people and automating, and factories to collecting statistics and doing work like that. And And I was like showing the guys, I was saying, look, we could do this like a lot more faster and you can get rid of 20 people here. But at the time, the cost of a person was like 400 or 500 CNY per month. You know, I'm talking, this is in Zhejiang. And so they just looked at me. They didn't really care about it back then. You know, this was back 2006, 2007. Now, obviously, things have changed. You know, it's like back then when you looked at a Chinese restaurant, there was so many staff, right, that would come and greet you. Now the situation has changed because the salaries have gone up a lot and they're being a lot more careful about that. And now you have the QR codes where you scan and you just order yourself. And, you know, they found ways to go down on the cost. But anyways, these are the kind of things, like the kind of background where I'm coming from. So I don't have like a PhD in computer science from MIT or something. You know, I'm not that kind of background when I come at this angle. And a lot of people who write books about this do come from that background, but some of them probably don't really have that much experience of, you know, how companies operate.
Like
and,
real world experience.
Yeah, real world experience.
Like real world implementation instead of just coming from an academic perspective.
They have this kind of rosy view that, you know, companies will use it in a beneficial way to employees to help augment them in something. And some of them will. I mean, some companies will. I think we'll have two profiles of companies. One, which is just trying to automate the most in order to really reduce labor cost and have the cheapest product possible. And then some that are going more in the direction of developing their team's agility and using these tools in that direction, in that sense, you know. So that's really the two extremes, and that's, you know, the two extremes of the spectrum. There'll be a lot of different types inside, and even within a company, based on the style of the manager or what, you could have different styles emerge. But I think that's really how it's going to play out, and I'm not sure which one is going to be the most successful in the end. That, you know, time will tell.
Well, do you predict a lot of asymmetry in those two types of companies? Those two profiles.
Oh yeah, I think some will be more creative than others. Some will probably be more just taking some ideas and just doing them the most efficient way possible, like the way they do in China. You know, just you scale something up and then you just become very difficult to compete with it. That's how they become number one in solar energy and all these things, electric vehicles now. But it's not really where most of the innovation comes from necessarily. You know, the innovation comes because, you know, well, you got Tesla to put a factory here and everything, so everyone can learn from them how this works. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into this whole topic on AI, but really, again, focused on the jobs, because that's another problem that I see, and I see this a lot in podcasts and interviews and everything when people talk about, oh, we're going to do something about AI in jobs, is that they start asking questions, they start talking, and then they just go on the side. They just diverge towards different topics, still related to AI. But the problem with AI is it's so vast, the issues that you have with AI, that it's very hard to stay on topic, you know, to stay focused on this. And that was a big challenge for me writing the book, to not talk about other issues, that you have all these ethical problems with AI. So I did have to talk a little bit about it, obviously, because you can't, you know, escape it. But I try really to focus on the job aspect. So getting back at your question about the two camps, there are these two camps, and then there's a third camp that's saying, like, it doesn't really matter whether you believe it's going to, you know, the robocalypse scenario, or this is going to make our life abundant and we don't have to work anymore, rosy scenario. Because they say that this level of technology, if you're talking about like artificial super intelligence, we're nowhere near to that. So it's going to take a long time to get there. So it doesn't really matter what, you know, you think it might do. But the reality of the question is that, and the reason why there's so much debate around it is because we don't even understand our own intelligence. So it's kind of hard to understand, like, okay, what can artificial intelligence be? How can we create an artificial intelligence, a truly artificial intelligence, which is at the same level as a human being intelligence, or that goes beyond that? How can you define that? It's very difficult because we don't understand ourselves to begin with. So this is also part of the problem, because if you don't know what it is, then you don't know at the current stage how far are we from achieving it. You don't know where it is, and you don't know when you pass the point of no return. You can't put it on a radar or something. There's no way. We're in uncharted territory.
Like,
so
the benchmarks are not clear.
Well, it's already past the Turing test benchmark, right? Which we originally thought it was going to be the idea of what AGI was, but it's not.
Yeah,
right?
So the Turing test is a bit, that's kind of like not really used anymore as a metric, because you think, you know, I mean, yeah, you could have some sort of AI that can, you know, always dupe a kid or something until, you know, or even some adults into thinking that it's a person when it's not, but that's not really necessarily the metric for intelligence anymore. So people have kind of like backtracked on that. And then there's the matter of like, okay, even if it can dupe someone, it doesn't mean that it's understanding anything of what it's doing. It doesn't mean it has consciousness. That's the whole the Chinese room argument, where, you know, if you want to put it in a modern way, it's like, okay, if I can, I can just, if I'm reading Chinese and I use Google Translate to translate everything, then I could explain what this Chinese text says, even though I don't read Chinese. That's kind of the argument. So that's what a computer and AI is doing, basically. It's ChatGPT is receiving your questions. Yeah, it's receiving your questions, and it's using statistics to provide their words that fit together to make a sentence to provide an answer to it. But it's just really advanced statistics. And a lot of the issue stems from this, the terming itself of artificial intelligence is a very spooky kind of definition, and it was done back in the time 70 years ago, in 1956 or 57. The guy came out with this concept because there was all these different branches of research coming out, and he used this term. He coined the term artificial intelligence to kind of encompass this whole different, variety of fields that were popping up. And once I saw this very funny, I thought it was interesting definition of artificial intelligence when someone on Twitter was asking, like, so what is AI? And a guy answers to him, it says, it's a bad choice of words that, dates back to 1957. Because that's really what it is. And that's where a lot of the issues that people are starting, they think about Terminators and all these kind of things. And obviously Hollywood helps to feed all that, over the years. Yeah. The whole Skynet thing, but it's a lot of statistics, really, So can these statistics lead to, some nukes being sent out or something? Well, yeah, who knows? I mean, there can always be a glitch in the system, right? Maybe the problem is with having nukes in the first place.
So I think I want to just step back for 1 second before we continue down this path, because I feel like this idea, in particular to your expertise in the book that you wrote and all the I guess the main topic that you're interested in, which is the job market and how it's may be displaced by AI or automation. So it's more like, in my mind, I want to have more of a open discussion about possibilities, because none of us are experts. None of us are AI like engineers, like you said. We're not economists, but we do understand different aspects of the economy. We do understand different aspects of corporations, and et cetera, et cetera. For the most simple question is AI or automation going to be replacing jobs in the future? And I think universally we can say, yes, that is going to happen.
Well, it's already happening.
Yes, right? It's already happening. Yeah. And in terms of how much that is happening, I don't know the statistics of that. Maybe it's something that you have learned about. Because I feel like, okay, so let me back up for 1 second. It's a couple of steps in this conversation. I feel like we can talk about current, like what's happening right now. Then we can talk about the near future, the next 2 years. I don't think we can go really past that, right? And then just open the minds. What is the future, 5-10 years, right? I think.
I mean, so far in the Western economies, we have a situation where unemployment is very low. So there's different ways that you can see the future in terms of jobs and the impact of technology on the future. So the different scenarios that are out there is going to you always see people that say, okay, we're going to face massive unemployment. So far, it hasn't happened yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen. But I don't think that's the direction we're necessarily going to go toward a short term. Some people think, okay, we might just have new laws that enable people to work less. So instead of plugging in 40 or 35-hour weeks, we'll be doing 30 or 25-hour weeks. That way, there'll be still enough work for everyone. There's a scenario whereby people will not need to work anymore, and you'll have universal basic income. There's also the fact that what we see a lot is jobs mismatch happening, where they want to do a certain kind of job, but there's too many people that want to do this job, but then the society needs people to do this kind of work and no one wants to do it. So there's also these kind of problems that happen. So it's quite complex to see this, and then it's going to diverge per country. So it's really hard to see. But what we have been seeing, and what is so far the trend, and this is not new with AI, it happened since the computers are out and since the 1970s, the real trend that has been happening is that we're having less jobs in the middle class, which we call middle class jobs. So if you look at the different jobs that exist in the spectrum, from like really low end jobs, like, working at a McDonald's, or really high end jobs like being a surgeon or an executive manager, when you look at all the jobs in these different levels of income, the ones that have evolved downwards over the past 50 years and even more in the past 20 years are the jobs at the middle level. So these are especially office and administrative jobs, some of the manufacturing jobs for the U.S., but that's also related to China's joining the world, the WTO. And you'll have different jobs in this middle class level, which is the biggest employer right now. I mean, it used to be like 60% of the jobs. Now it's going under 50% of the jobs, and it's still going down. And that's where we're having less and less jobs over time.
Are those the type of jobs that are more like routine and repetitive type labor?
Yes. And you got two types in there. You got the routine labor, which is manual. So this is more like, warehouse or production, manufacturing, these kind of jobs. And then you have the routine jobs, which are behind a computer. And so those are the ones that are being the most automated. So it's around half of the jobs in the US that are considered like routine jobs, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And those are the ones that are the most at direct threat right now. So the future, what the biggest economists like David Otter believe, is that we're going towards a future where you'll have people that have very good jobs, because these jobs are growing too. On high-level jobs, there's actually an increase in demand for these kind of jobs, what you call highly cognitive jobs. And then you have an increase in demand in the low-end jobs at the other side of the spectrum, for people like, delivering your food or cutting your hair or stuff like this. So you're going to have basically kind of wealthy people on one end and the poor people that serve them on the other end. And in the middle, there'll still be a middle class, but it'll be maybe just 10-20% of the society. So you're kind of going towards a society of haves and have-nots, and that's like the main worry right now.
So it'll be even more polarized than it already is.
Yeah, it's not in terms of politics or what, it's in terms of wealth, income.
Yeah, with the wealth gap, right?
Yeah.
You have the elites, and then you have the have.
And you're saying that before even the topic of AI coming in, this trend was already happening.
This trend was already begun, yeah. It can only accelerate now with AI, because AI, it's predicted to be targeting mostly these routine, recurrent tasks and jobs.
Wow, that's scary. That reminds me of that that Matt Damon movie, like Elysium.
Elysium, yeah,
right. That's basically what it was.
Can you go to the rich world?
Yeah.
Right?
But that's scary though.
It is kind of like that with the gated communities and things.
Get it.
I mean, and you have people like they're even going to like gated cities or what. So like Shanghai is a very safe city. I wouldn't say it's only rich people in Shanghai, but when you look at Dubai is really, you have both people there. You have the rich and you have the poor, but it's very much like you got this kind of Elysium feel over there. It's very separated, and it's a very safe place. So you got these safe havens for rich people. Yeah, they're like emerging throughout the world, and the different countries are competing for to have these people within their their borders in their areas. So they're trying to incentivize them to come.
So it wouldn't be crazy to say that perhaps maybe one of the largest threats of AI in general is maybe the social unrest it could eventually lead to.
This, again, is just the part. I mean, we're just talking about the impact of AI on the job market. There's a lot of other aspects after it, right? Yeah. So it can do a lot of other problems, I think. Like it could, you could end up not making decisions anymore. So the rumor has it that we make around 30,000 decisions a day. And it's quite, you get a kind of mental tiredness from having to make a lot of decisions sometimes.
I make like 2 decisions a day.
And it's obvious.
Like, what do I want to eat?
Yeah, but I mean, no. So you could have AI just now decide what kind of whiskey you pour in the glass, and based on a variety of factors. And but it could do this for a lot of things, and then suddenly you're making less and less decisions, and you're a grown up. But imagine your kids growing up with this AI making more and more decisions for them. They've just become accustomed to it, and they just let it make more and more decisions for them. And then in the end, what are you?
So going back to current again, in terms of the current technology that we have with AI, I also view it as AI and robotics, not just AI, because I feel like when robotics catches up, because it's not there yet, that's a whole nother discussion, right? Including the job market. But in terms of just pure AI, which is where we're at right now, and that's still not at AGI, still not at super intelligence. And AGI means artificial general intelligence, which is basically like human level. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer and closer. And there are rumors that we may already have been there. But I think currently, a lot of discussions that I have with friends and other people is, how do you prepare now? Because you can't, like I said, you can't really prepare yourself. You can't have your traditional, moving up the corporate ladder kind of mentality anymore, I feel like, for many people. And judging by what you said, it sounds like that's something that you also have to keep in mind. Is that something that you think that is true?
It is one of the issues, totally. I mean, if I take my own case, my very first job when I graduated, the only first job that I can find, I graduated from a business school in France at the beginning of the century, and I was looking for a job in different, in marketing and finance, anything I could find. And the first job I was able to find was that of translator / chauffeur. Because there was this, there's this American company. They were doing active M&As in France, and so they did their first acquisition in the UK, and then they were buying companies out in France, manufacturing companies, factories, and so they would appoint this English guy from the UK factory to go to France and to redress these companies, to try and make them profitable within a short time. So this guy was very good. The only problem is he didn't speak French and he doesn't know how to drive on the right side of the street. So that's where I came in. And so I was there, I was at the first witness for everything going on. I was in the first row for all of the discussions, all of the negotiations with labor unions, handling strikes, hiring people, firing people, all this stuff. So I was really in the middle of that, in the center, and it was really a good job experience. And because I was acquainted with the management through that, and they saw I was a good guy, then I eventually landed a real-time job there as finance controller. But my point is, within 10 years, I would never have access. The door to this company, I would never get through it because there would be no need for drivers or for translators. They would just use technology to do this. They wouldn't have someone to do this. So in a lot of cases, yes, the ladder is going to have like a big hole in the middle. So you're not going to be able to climb up this ladder. It's going to be very difficult. And I think of this in my case, but I mean, think about all the immigrants who arrive in the US or who arrive in Europe and, who start off like with little odd jobs or what, but then their kids are able to go to school and they're able to get more like middle-class job. And then maybe later on they're able to, climb the thing. But I mean, there's a big risk here that the ladder is broken and that the people at the bottom will stay at the bottom and that there's no more social mobility. So that's also one of the, one of the side effects.
Like the rungs of the ladder are being taken away.
It's kind of the case, yeah.
But wouldn't there be, I'm just playing devil's advocate, but wouldn't there be other doors that would open in the corporate ladder scenario that we just can't think of right now? Like, wouldn't there be other ways, other means?
It's always possible, yes. It's always possible that there's things we don't think about. So, I mean that, we can't fathom at this stage because the world changes, and that's what people in the past said. They say, oh, if you look at the jobs today, like 80% of them didn't exist a century ago or something. So, yeah, new jobs can come out, but you need to know, like, okay, now what it is that these jobs will be, because again, when you answer this question about what your strategy should be, it also depends, where you're at right now, how old you are and everything. If you're like 20 years old, you still got half a century to plan for that you're going to be working.
Be flexible, right? I think you have to be very flexible.
You have to be very flexible.
If you're young right now,
yeah.
You got to be flexible.
Be ready to pivot, right?
Exactly.
Be ready to cross someone over, do a spin move.
Well, actually, you just mentioned something that let's just kind of talk about a little bit more. Previously, when talking about different, like industrial revolution, agricultural revolution, it displaced a lot of jobs, but also created a lot of jobs. This time, this fourth technological revolution, as we were saying, is not comparable almost, because recent revolutions were not cognitive revolutions, right? They were just tools, like literal tools that humans can use and that can easily be displaced.
Right, for manual work.
Yeah, especially for manual labor, right? But we're talking about something that, especially when it gets to AGI, which is not far, it's going to be able to literally replace the human itself. So what is that? Like, how does that break down then?
The first point, like you mentioned, is that the old tools would replace manual labor. So you could always find a refuge in cognitive labor, working at an office on a computer with data. So that was like the go-to place to get a good salary. And now this refuge is being encroached on by AI. The second thing is that the tools of the past were focusing on just one function. So it was like a tool, just like, a punching machine would just do this one thing. If you have like, no matter what the tool, it would just focus on one task. But now with more broader AI, or with 1,000 different narrow AIs, you can find every single task that you have to do could be done by AI. Or it could be done, again, through a combination of AI and outsourcing. So you mentioned earlier that there's different technologies than AI, and obviously you have to take those in account too. There's a lot of technologies. There's drones, there's modular manufacturing, there's origami manufacturing, there's augmented reality, there's assisted reality, there's mixed realities, there's VR, so assisted reality, for instance, is where you have the glasses and you have a little camera there, and someone else can see exactly what it is that you see, and they can add in little information on the camera that you see on your glasses to tell you, like, like errors or whatever, to help you to do something. So you could be doing your job, for instance, if you take the guys, the Quaidi, right? How do you call those in English? The coursiers or delivery man?
Delivery man?
Yeah, while the guy is doing the delivery, at the same time, he could just come into your house and fix the pipe, or, do some electric work or something, even though he has no qualification for this, but just because he has the glasses, and there can be some dude in in North Africa or who's like guiding him on how you do this.
Like
and
not even a dude. It could just be
like
AI.
a live
it
tutorial.
could be AI. I'm just saying, in the case where AI is not that performant, I'm just saying you could also use this as a case like this.
Well, what about with Elon's like Neuralink? It could just be like, you wouldn't even have to have something on your glasses. It'd just be like in your head.
That's still the ways.
That's a ways.
I'm talking about technology.
Don't open that up.
I'm talking about technology that exists today at this stage. You have assisted reality. It's something.
Well,
that
isn't
exists
like
today.
Meta is already have a prototype for that, stuff like that. The glasses.
Meta's is different because it has AI. Meta's.
Okay.
I mean, it depends which one you're referring to. I thought if you're referring to the
saw
Quest,
a headline one time, and they showed some glasses they were experimenting with.
Yeah, the Quest 3 or their Quest models, those have AR. Then they have the more simpler models that they do with Ray-Ban that are just it's just with a camera, and you have some AI, but there's no augmented reality or anything on those.
Well, hold on. I want to address one thing though that you guys were saying before in terms of this fourth industrial revolution. In terms of like, it just can't be comparable with anything previous. And I kind of feel that way too. I kind of get that, but let's rewind the clock, right? Let's go back in time and let's say we're now at, the birth of the internet right now. And we don't know anything about the future. We're just there. Wouldn't we also be saying with the internet, like, oh, this cannot be comparable with anything previous? And who knows what this can lead to? I mean, it's the freaking internet, right? Like, wouldn't that also be an example of a time where a great technology kind of changed and disrupted everything, and it was not comparable with any technologies that came before it?
It's comparable with what happens before, because this is like, so whether you look at the internet or AI or electricity or steam, these are the kind of technologies people refer to as general purpose technologies. And so it's really the ones that are the most, like, they're very broad, they're going to hit all sectors, and they're very deep in their impact, and it's very long lasting, and it really just changes everything, not just work, but, the whole society.
The concept of how to live through society.
Yeah. So these are very big, they cause a huge change, a huge upheaval. And for the internet, yeah, totally. At the time, typically when you hear people today like asking like, oh, should our company get into AI? I'm like, well, I mean, did your company get into internet? And they're like, yeah, we did. Well, it's like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like back at the time, companies were wondering, like, should we get into the internet or not? And today everyone is, it's not a question. It's no longer a question. But the agenda of the internet and the agenda of AI are very different. So internet in its agenda is very different from the past revolutions. But internet, what does it do? It basically enhances communication. AI is more something which can do a lot of things, and one of the things it can do is, change the equation for labor. Reduce the labor amount in that equation.
Yeah, I think just in its most simplest terms, in my mind, is that all previous innovations or revolutions that we went through, like fire, the wheel, machinery, technology, internet, electricity, etc. These are all general purpose use that will affect the way you live through society, but they will not replace the human being, period, I think. You know what I mean? That's the biggest difference. It's not replaceable. You're not replacing a human. You're replacing what a human interacts with. And eventually, the way it's supposed to go, which is still, I think, the card's out there, right? We're not exactly positive 100% we're going to hit AGI, we're going to hit the singularity, etc., or super intelligence, but the way we're going, it's supposed to, and the timeline's getting closer and closer. And the reason why it's such a big deal is because if that hits, it's human replacement. I mean, in terms of labor, in terms of
like on a mass scale.
Yeah, right? Like if once it combines with robotics, then then it's basically another human.
The reason I don't really get into the whole AGI ASI debate is because you don't need that to replace humans in work. It's you don't need that. You can have like 1,000 or thousands of narrow AIs that can do our job, for a lot of jobs, not all of the jobs. If you're really at the high levels, then yes, you need to have a more general kind of AI that can understand all the different, that can connect the dots between really disparate elements where you cannot put it under a single denominator to quantify like, okay, should we do this action versus that action? There's just too many parameters to take into account. That's like really when you're making strategic decisions and things. So for this, I think the existing AI, even with ChatGPT or what, it's not going to be good enough. But the majority of jobs out there are not like this. So, when I hear like these people, I read in a book saying like, yeah, the AI is not ready to take the managerial's seat, the manager's seat or something. It's like, yeah, I agree. But the problem is, 70% of the people, they don't occupy the manager's seat right now. That's the people that I'm concerned about. So my book is not targeting the leaders and because there's already a lot of books out there that target them, that tell them like, how do you harness big data? How do you use AI for your, do your digital strategy and everything. There's a lot of books on that. I'm targeting the employee.
Yeah. But this is also current though, because I feel like right now you're only basing on the current technology, the level of AI currently. Yes, 70% of jobs are not going to be in that managerial position, but as innovation continues, that literally can be replaced.
Well, I also think it's really eye-opening and a little funny what Ash said too. And it really opened up my eyes in terms of, we often think like it needs to be like this crazy super intelligent technology, like artificial super intelligence, right? To replace us. And that's kind of like giving our own intelligence a little too much credit. like most of our brain function and most of our tasks do not require artificial super intelligence, right? It can be a very just like normal type of basic intelligence, and it could already replace most of us, right? So it's like we're completely like overestimating. It's like only Superman can replace me. It's like what?
Yeah, it can replace a lot of the dull work and what they call the bullshit jobs and everything. And this is why some people say, well, it's a good thing because that way everyone can do more creative stuff. And right, but I have a hard time picturing everyone, putting on the white clothes and working in a lab or something to develop new technology. I wish that could happen, and we'd accelerate, we really be able to go to Mars and everything and do really cool stuff. But I just don't see that happening, It's like a huge transformation, and it might happen at someday. Maybe 2 decades later, we will be there. My question is, what do we do in the meanwhile? How do you, play your cards right to stay out of the water for as long as possible? Because it's going to get brutal.
I believe, and I'm sounding like you believe as well. It's stages, right? It's not like tomorrow all of a sudden we're going to wake up and be like, oh fuck, everybody's job's gone, right? It's going to come in stages. Exactly. Right now, AI is a tool for productivity. It's going to help people. If you use AI, like I use AI all the time to help me do my day to day, get me through the day to day in a very more efficient way, and many people do that, right? What's next, right? Until eventually, where I was just saying that it's going to become human replacing. Then yes, there's certain jobs already it's human replacing, but in terms of mass,
so it depends what you do in your job and how much of your job can be automated. If it's like less than say 20-30%, you can find other things to do with that time, and so this kind of augments you. And this is the case, the famous cases with bank tellers back in the 70s and the 80s when they started rolling out ATMs in the States. There was people coming out saying, well, this is going to be the end of the job of the bank teller. But then because the bank tellers back then, that's what they did. They would trade cash with give change and stuff and take their customers' cash and put it in the bank. And suddenly these tasks were no longer required. But what they actually found out was that by liberating their time, by freeing their time from this, the bank teller was able to sit down and spend more meaningful time with the customers, trying to sell them, this mortgage here, this product there, and everything, and screw them this way,
Screw them that way.
in a way that is more productive for the bank. And by doing this, the banks were able to make a lot of money, open a lot more banks all around the country, and those banks needed more people. So actually, it led to an increase in the number of bank tellers. And so this is like a good example. But then this little story, usually when people tell it, they stop the story around 2010 or what, and that's when the charts stop and they don't continue them. But then I actually went into the statistics and I looked at what happened after that. And well, obviously you had the financial crisis in 2008 that really hit the bank tellers like a lot of jobs. But even after that, the jobs of bank tellers have kept on going down. So they peaked in, I think it was in 2007 or something. There was
What is that correlated to, though?
well, so there was over 600,000 bank tellers in the States. Now there's like less than 350,000. So it just keeps on going down. And what is it correlated to it? That's a good question. I think, well, you had the finance crisis to begin with, but then there's technology. There's fintech. There's
online banking. Even,
online banking,
right? Online
right.
banking, and
Right.
app banking.
Yeah.
You don't need as many for the common day-to-day activities. You don't need to go to a teller. The only time, even for me, I don't go to a teller until I actually cannot make it happen through my web or my app, right? I have to talk to somebody. That's
Right.
the only time.
Right. So there's different kinds of impacts that technology can have on the job, whether it's AI or other technology. One of it is going to be like freeing up some of your time. So if it's like 20 to 30%, again, you can be kind of spend that time to do better stuff, the stuff you never had the time to do more meaningful stuff, more value-added tasks. But if we're talking about like 70 to 80% of your time that can be replaced by AI, then, you're in a more dangerous place there,
Oh yeah. I feel like not everyone is gonna immediately know, like, oh, this is what I'll do with my time now.
No.
I think a lot of people will be lost. A lot of people without their kind of real jobs, they'll be lost. Their sense of purpose will be harder to find, I feel. And that's scary because I think about myself and I'm like, okay, well, like I wouldn't really know. Like if everything I could do was replaced by AI, like what else would I do?
I also think about, you were mentioning earlier how, well, first of all, there's many different camps of people, right? You were mentioning with like the doomsayers, and then you got the people that's very.
Well, I don't want to let Ash off the hook because he never actually answered that question.
Oh, please, please. Yes, please.
Let's not let him. Yeah, he kind of deflected. Yeah,
let's not move on.
He rerouted the conversation.
I kind of gave a hint that I'm not part of the doomsayers, and in the sense of thinking like, yeah, there's going to be like this Terminator scenario thing. I don't buy into that. I think that's overblown, and I think it's very dangerous entertaining this kind of debate because it's distracting, people from the real problems, the real core problems. Like there's real issues that need to be tackled and that people need to really look at, and specifically, particularly one of them being the job market.
Yeah.
There's other issues too, but the job market is one problem, and it's being distracted by this whole
like Terminator narrative, right? It's
Terminator
like
narrative.
Even if
sensationalist narrative.
Because even if that were to happen, that's not anytime soon, right? But what you're talking about today, about the job market changing drastically in the near future and now, is something that we're facing.
There's something that we're facing.
It's here.
Right.
It's not that later future or whatever that timeline is, because nobody knows.
Yeah.
So why even dwell on that? And that's actually where it leads me to this other question, which is you have a lot of other people that also focus on what you're talking about, which is the immediate future, the immediate present. What are the concerns that the general society have, whether it's through jobs or even just culturally, right? But a lot of people think positive in terms of, it's going to replace jobs, but it's also going to give you more time to be more creative, to give you more time to, I don't know, spend time doing things you love, et cetera, without getting into the economics of how you're going to get paid and stuff like that.
You still got to make a living first,
right?
of all.
But that, I think that falls down to the corporations. So my question is there an ethical, ethical consideration that these companies need to have in terms of balancing AI versus human labor? Because that's on the corporations. It's not on the common person, right? It's the leaders of companies deciding on if they're going to, push the AI agenda or keep a balance or something like that.
I hope so.
Because I feel like there's that hope, right? You
I
said
hope
that
so.
hope.
Yeah, but my advice to anyone is hope for the best, plan for the worst. You can't just lay back on your couch and think, okay, well, this is the company's problem or it's the government problem, and I'm going to wait for them to solve it.
Yeah, don't leave it in their hands. Right?
That's not my advice. I mean, some people might do that, and some people are going to like take action on themselves and educate themselves and see, okay, make up a strategy about what they're going to do. And when you look, within 5 years down the road, we'll see how those people are, each faring.
But even beyond, I'm not even talking about the workforce. I'm just talking about in terms of the responsibilities of the corporations, right? Now, obviously, we are all realistic people here. We're not going to think the corporations are going to be thinking for the workforce.
Well, the corporations only have a responsibility to their shareholders.
Exactly, to themselves or the shareholders.
And the reason why you have all these books out there talking about digital, how you can, surf on the whole fourth industrial revolution wave is because they want to be sure that the company is able to survive and to, harness this and to grow with the AI and everything. Because if ever it doesn't, if they get disrupted by a company like Apple or Tesla or whatever, who's able to, get to them through technology, the company will go bankrupt. The shareholders are going to lose their money. The CEO is going to get fired. Everyone loses. But if the company is able to compete with against them, by reducing their costs and firing the part of their employees, what's going to happen? The shares are going to go up. The shareholders are happy, and the CEO is going to get a fat bonus. To the employee, the result is the same. They just lost their job. So that's why there's no books on this. There's no books explaining for what the employees got to do, because no one cares. People only care about the CEOs and the shareholders, and that's where the angle that I'm trying to take here.
I think that's so great, because what I was trying to get at is all the positive speak that I've heard from people talking. I just feel like they're not living in reality. You know what I'm saying? They're not living in reality, and what you just said right there, I think, is something that is really important. You can't just hope that the corporations and the government's going to help lead the way to make sure society is going to be good. Fucking greedy people, man.
Well, I mean, at least from the speaking to corporations, I mean, the entity of a corporate interest is just intrinsically the interests are just different than the interest of its workers.
Yeah.
The stakes are just too high. I mean, you can't just lay back. The stakes are too high. Take a corporation, for instance. They could think, okay, well, I got two options here. Either I train my workforce to, get on with this stuff and understand this stuff, and I got to go through it to train them through it. And, are they even willing to do it in the first place? Because they just, okay, we're forcing them to train this stuff. Or I could just go out on the, freelance.com or whatever and find some giggers who will do the job for us. And wow, the giggers are doing a very good job. Why don't we just use the giggers instead of these people? Because giggers are paid by the click, not by the clock. So the giggers know this. They're the first ones to start using ChatGPT. It's not employees in the company that are using ChatGPT. The first ones to get on any kind of technology that can help you be more efficient and faster are going to be giggers, because they're out in open competition with everyone. And
when you're talking about giggers, you mean like freelancers?
Yeah,
people,
freelancers.
Yeah.
That's another threat. It's the gig economy, which is gaining.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge one, too. And that's actually a really interesting insight. It's like the people working in that gig economy are actually the early adopters, right?
Yep.
Because they depend on it. They don't have a safety net.
Yep.
They got to be on the cutting edge and finding all sorts of crafty ways to try to get a leg up, right? When you're working in that economy, I guess. Going back to the whole corporate thing, I mean, everyone's, whether you're a corporate entity or you're just an individual person, your most basic mode is survival. And oftentimes I think what helps a company survive is not the same thing as what helps an employee survive. Oftentimes those things are at odds, right? So I think, Ash, let me ask you then, without giving away too much of your book, because I want people to get it, what are some things that the normal person, the average Joe, should be doing then? You keep talking about that. You keep talking about look, it's great to talk about the problem, but what are some solutions for the everyday person? Can you kind of shed some light on that?
No, I mean, it's going to be very different if you're a student as opposed to someone already 30 or 40 years old, already with a job, what kind of record track you have, everything. So it's really hard to give. There's no silver bullet, but there are obviously some principles that you can apply. And you can't just go with the flow or something. You can't just, that's no longer going to work. It's not going to add to your, chances of success and of being able to ride the wave. So you need to have a strategy. And what is a strategy? A strategy is really getting to the basics. It's how do you get from this point to that point? And so you need to know what it is you want to get to. You also need to know what it is your current situation. What is the as-is situation? So I recommend that the people begin by doing something like a SWOT analysis, where you look at your, you do an introspection of your job. Where are you now? What are you doing? What are you good at? What are you not good at? And do
and
this.
Like, what are your threats? Right? What are the threats
and then what and how is AI encroaching on this field, or how could it technically encroach on this? Merging with other different elements, like giggers or freelancers or outsourcing or all these things. Like, just be very creative and thinking like, okay, how can this come at me, and what else could I do? For to survive, and what kind of skills do I need to get, so that I can get on top of things. So there's different kinds of disruption to job. There's one type where it just, like ChatGPT, just makes something that used to be difficult accessible to everyone. Like, anyone now can write a nice email or something. Anyone now can produce images with Midjourney. So you don't have to be like that skilled or anything. So it basically devalues expertise. Like, you see taxi drivers, well, you don't need to know the whole city now anymore because the app does it for you. So the expertise of the taxi driver is irrelevant now, and anyone can do this for much cheaper. And if you look at the average salaries of taxi drivers in the UK, for instance, it's gone down in the past years. And this is a typical threat. It's the democratization of something, where the value of a skill becomes eroded by technology. Then you have another type of impact where technology is going to augment the worker. And in this type, you're going to have two scenarios. One that we discussed before, where it actually frees some of the time from some of the grunt work so that you can do more interesting things. That's kind of like indirectly enhancing you because it gives you more time, on condition that it doesn't give you, take all of your time, replace everything. But then you have the other case, which is that really you're directly enhanced. And this is going to be a tool usually, which is a lot more difficult to master. If you look at something like I mentioned, ChatGPT or Midjourney, these you look at a tutorial on YouTube, within 2 minutes, you know how to use it. I'm talking about tools that takes many years of use and practice to get good with, like Photoshop or programming, or even something like Excel, when you really get into the depths of it, and it leads to programming. These are tools like AutoCAD or SolidWorks or what. These are tools that can really like enhance the worker and make you much more productive, so that you can do the job of like 2 or 3 other people. If you go for that kind of job, if you go for that kind of direction, then, it can get really good. And it can be also combining different elements from left and right. But it's going to really, you're going to have this tool aspect where you want to ally with the tools and not fight against them. You want to ally with the tools because you're not fighting against the tools. You're fighting against other guys around you. That's why the whole title of the book, Battle Royale, is that, you have like 10 people in the office now. Tomorrow there's going to be only 3 or 2 left, maybe only 1. So, how can you be that last person? Obviously, that person is going to be very computer savvy. Then you have other aspects that also help. The human touch is something that often comes up. It's obvious if you're like at contact with people, if you're able to work well with people, then they're going to want to come back to you and work with you. If you're like a photographer or something, well, you have the trust that you build over the years working with people, getting work done well, being agreeable, going the extra mile for your customer, being able to see things that AI wouldn't see, to be able to provide an extra service that maybe they hadn't even thought of. And then they'll be like, wow, okay. And like this, you build a reputation little by little. At some point, you might even get entrepreneurial wings and think, okay, I could go on my own now, and make a living off of this. So the human touch is something that is really important too. So if you're in a front office job, then it's good that you're able to like cultivate this so that you get the love of your customers, and that way it's also a way to get value. If you're in a back office job, it's going to be a bit more difficult. Though you could say that other departments within the company are your customers, but it's a bit more difficult to do because you're under just one decision maker, which remains the company. Whereas if it's with customers, it's a bit more ambiguous there. So yeah, there's different strings that you can play on and that you have to play on. And you need to also obviously you need continuous learning. You need to build your social networks. These things, these are truisms that existed before, but they become even more relevant in this age. And again, you have to have a strategy and see where you can link to. Like for instance, I often target one case that I know about quite well through my work is the case of accountants. So someone doing accounting is a job that they're really like square in the the target of what can be automated. to a high extent. If you look like someone who's doing accounts payable, they're basically receiving all the invoices from the suppliers and plugging them in the system. Now with something like optimal character recognition, these kind of softwares, which you even have on an iPhone now, you could just plug it directly into the system, theoretically. So this is the kind of thing, like they're really at threat. So what could an accountant, someone who's in this discipline, what could they branch out to still remain relevant? Well, if you look at the history of accounting, accountants have been around obviously for thousands of years. You had them in Egypt and Mesopotamia and everything, but it really grew as a profession only in 100 years, in the past century, because government started implementing corporate tax laws, saying that, the company, they have to pay tax on the profit. So in order to see what the profit of the company is, you had to come up with this set of rules on how you calculate, what goes in the balance sheet, what goes in the P&L, how you do depreciation, all these things. And that's when really all the companies had to start having accountants, and the profession came up, and, there's schools teaching this as a profession.
Because it got so much more complicated.
Yeah, because it got so much more complicated and because it became mandatory. Now, what's the next thing that is going totally in this direction now? It's ESG, environmental and social governance. This is the kind of thing now which is growing big time, and there's already talks throughout, in different governments, they're all talking about this, like how do we get companies to track their carbon emissions, their carbon footprint, and to keep records of this in the same way that they do it with their accounting already. How do you measure this? How do you track it? And it's something that eventually is going to become mandatory, and they're all looking at now how companies are even, taking the first steps themselves to say, okay, how can we track this and how can we do this kind of job? This is a job, when you look at what it is that you have to do, the skills and the qualities that are in there, it's not something from like a guy from Greenpeace is going to do. No, it's an accounting job. It's an accountant job, to collect the data, to like have it in the nice format and all that, to do all this stuff. It's really similar to accounting. So I think for people, like, especially for young people, you shouldn't just go and think like, oh, I'm training to become an architect or to become to work in marketing or something. No, you have to look at what kind of skills you like. What is it that you like to do, but what kind of skills you have also. Do you prefer working with figures, with numbers on a computer all day long, or do you prefer working with people? Are you very perfectionist, or do you have attention to detail, or are you more like just tinkering and you see if it works, and you work by reiteration on very fast, rapid clip in order to get something done? So what is your communication style? You like to make histories and tell stories and anecdotes, or are you very factual? Do you like to use figures, or do you like to use more images and everything to communicate? So there's all these different aspects that you need to learn about yourself. And then when you know this, then you can know like, okay, yeah, what kind of jobs is this relevant in, and that's when you see some people that can do like a huge reconversion. They can rebrand themselves into something that looks totally different. But when you look at the skills that are involved, actually, it makes a lot of sense. There's a common thread there. And so this is what you got to look at more than a job, because the job might change, the job might disappear, the job might just morph completely into something different, which requires different skills, or it could change names. It doesn't really matter. But if you just focus on your skills, those things remain, and those things will have relevance in certain jobs or other jobs. So this is more like the way that you can look at it. It's very unfortunate, though, that the educational system right now does not focus on this. You don't have like questionnaires and tests and everything to see what are your aptitudes in all these different elements that I just gave a few examples of just now. So that's something that the educational system should change on. And I think it's regrettable. I haven't found apps that do this, but I think there should be a market for this, where you can do an app to help people to know themselves better and just know what it is that they're good at. And again, it doesn't have to be a job title. It can be more like, you can see after what is the match with different kind of jobs. Where is this relevant or not relevant, And these are the kind of things that you have to look at. So I was focusing more on younger people, because this is a question that I see asked all the time. There's always like a student that rises up and asks this question to whoever's talking, the keynote speaker or whatever. And the guy's always starting saying like, oh, yeah, that's a very good question, and whenever they say that, it's going to be like, okay, he's going to answer beside the question, or
because they don't know how to answer it,
or he's going to answer with a truism like, oh, do what you love, what your passion is, or something, and it's like it really doesn't help, So it is a tough question. It's a very complex question, because again, these people, they have like half a century to go, and technology changes really fast now, and so they're really at a loss, and so yeah. It is a tough question, but you have to spend a lot of time with that question and not just jump to the answer.
Yeah, there's one thing you said earlier in this conversation really stuck with me, and I'm hearing it as you speak too, in terms of addressing the tough questions around this topic, right? Because they are really tough, and like you said, they're so complex, and who knows. You know, you were talking about your book, and you were talking about like the fact that, you know, it's fortunate that you had, you know, you covered ChatGPT in your book, because had you not, the whole book would have been irrelevant. And it just goes to show, just like how technology becomes irrelevant so fast, like the old iPhones, you know, you have the new iPhone now, and you have the different memory storages and different computers and hard disks that make ones a few years ago like almost obsolete, basically. The same is with the conversation around this thing, right? Like the conversation evolves so quickly, where a conversation today about this topic could be completely irrelevant a month from now.
100%.
Right. And that's also, you know, that's another dynamic to this entire issue that's really fascinating, and it's hard to wrap your mind around. Another thing from what you just said, in terms of trying to address that problem, like what do you do? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like I heard you say at least one of your first initial points was basically the given of you have to have great computer skills. And that makes perfect sense, because as of now, computers are the human interface in which they use to use AI or any of these types of technologies, right? So that's the tool. And you have to be good at using that tool, otherwise you're not going to be connected to the new innovation. And that's changed a lot, because in my day, when I was growing up, I remember very clearly somebody saying to me, because I've never been tech savvy, I've never been good with computers. Howie knows this. And I remember like kind of being down on myself when I was young about that. This was like in high school or something. And then I remember someone very clearly saying to me, someone older, right? Saying, like, this is like a successful person, like saying to me, like, "Oh, don't worry, like your workers will be good at computers. You don't need to be good at computers."
That's a very good point. So actually, I show to the people that I talk with on this topic the relevance of computer skills based on your seniority, based on your age. So when you start working, if you come up and, you know, you go at the interview or whatever, or you start your job and your boss, you know, probably just an intern, and he asks you like, what are you good at? If you're telling like, oh, I'm really good at managing people, they're gonna laugh.
Yeah.
there's just no way you can get them to swallow that, you know. Yeah. But if you tell them that you're good at computers and that you know how to code and that you're good at this stuff, they're gonna believe you, you know. And I mean, if you're bluffing, they'll find out sooner or later. But I mean, it's something that young people can be credible with, and this is the only credible item that they have. You know, anything else, they can't say like, oh, I'm an expert in marketing, or I'm good at, you know, finance control or something. There's just no way they can get away with that. But if they say that they're good at computer skills, this is something that people will believe in. So this is really like one of the best weapons that the young person has when they enter the job market. Now, if you're a senior and you're good with computers, then of course that's good too. But what I'm trying to say is that as you get older, and as you know, you make more, as you get a track record in the company and everything, the computer skills become less relevant, and management skills come more into play. Mm-hmm. So if you ask like you know, Warren Buffett or you know, the Bernard Arnault or what, like, do you have good computer skills? Well, they don't need it, because like you just said, they got tons of, you know, lieutenants working for them that have got great computer skills. They don't need to have this kind of skills. So yeah, it is more relevant at the early stages.
But even that concept, I feel, is already outdated, right? Like, let's say the leaders and high executives in the company of the future, do you think they'll still be able to get away with like not having good computer skills?
They need to be able to know what it can and cannot do, so that they don't have these extravagant requests to their staff. Like when you look at Elizabeth Holmes, she asked for the computer for this, what was it, the Edison machine, this size, to be able to diagnose blood and everything. She was just making these outrageous requirements to her R&D, her engineers, who were like looking like that. Well, that's not possible. But she was like so adamant that they had to do this, and that's how, you know, Theranos went the wrong way down the hill. Yeah. Computer skills are relevant. And again, that doesn't mean you have to jump into coding. You have to start really with where you are now and look little by little, you know, or else you're just going to like race ahead, and you're going to tire yourself down for nothing without making any progress. So you got to really look at, based on where you are now, you know, what is it? And maybe you don't have to jump into Python or what. Maybe you can start with like, you know, getting to learn how to use Excel shortcuts and stuff like that, you know, to become more efficient as a starting point. You know, learn how to use a keyboard, you know, learn how to use, you know, formulas, functions and things. But again, you really need to look at what kind of job you do. I just got back from a business trip to India, and it just so happens that when I was younger, I was really into Hindu mythology and stories like, the Mahabharata, the Rig Veda, and all these things. And when I'm over there and when I'm talking with these potential customers and everything, you go out for dinner and everything, you have these long chats and everything. They really appreciate a foreigner who knows so much about their culture. You have no idea like how much impact this has. You don't know all the shit that they get in India. They have a very bad soft power, So whenever you talk about India to anyone, there's only two words that come to mind of people. It's like castes and rape. So that's like just a terrible kind of image that people have hanging on around India. But if you actually know a bit about their culture and everything, and they see this, that you have this appreciation, that can do like a huge, that can go really far. And this is another thing. It's something that is completely underappreciated. And I remember when I was a kid and I went to school in this like dodgy neighborhood in France. And once I told the history professor there, I'm like, look, man, this subject that we're doing is useless. History is not a useful subject. It's not going to help us get a job. Why are we even here? And the guy, okay, he was like a pure academic French, so they kind of like despise, I think, the private corporate world or something. And he just nodded his head saying, yeah, you're right, But actually now I know that we were both totally wrong. And I think it's so bad of him to not defend his profession, because the history is something very useful to have this kind of general culture, your cultural breadth and everything. Even here, I was giving the example in India with potential customers, but even like when you're in the company, suppose you have like this cocktail party or this dinner, this barbecue, Thanksgiving or whatever organized by the company, any of these kind of occasions where the bosses are there and they see the staff and everything. If you have two staff that are just as good, they just do the same, they excel at their job at the same level and everything, but one of them is unable to hold a sophisticated conversation, whereas the other one has this really breadth of, intellectual depth and this cultural knowledge and everything. You obviously want to have like at the upper management levels, people who know things and people, who read in papers and who have a bit of history, knowledge and things like this. It does make a difference. Yeah. I'll give you another example. When I was a kid, I remember once I had my dad, he was working with Russians at the time. This was obviously before the war, and there were some Russians that came over for dinner with a translator and everything. And he just told them, to make conversation. Yeah, my 12-year-old kid, he's into like history and World War II stuff and everything. And so the Russians asked me like, okay, so what was the Russia's best tank during World War II? And I answered right away. So the Joseph Stalin II. And then there was like this huge like heated debate, like just exploded between the Russians. They were down with the vodka by then and everything. And it was just like, and the translator couldn't keep up and everything. And my dad just thought it was so funny and everything, because they were arguing, like one of them was saying, no, it's the T-34. And then the other one, they were coming up with all these different things. And then I told him, I corrected myself. I said, yeah, the T-34 is the tank that helped them win the war because it was mass produced and everything. But the most sophisticated, upgraded tank that they had was the Joseph Stalin II, and then they're like, wow, and everything, okay, let's drink to that and everything, and just this kind of thing.
Props, like respect.
Yeah. And my dad was really proud of me, this kind of kid that enlightened the Russians, because this is like hitting on the pride of Russia, this is like they suffered big time during that war, more than any other country. Yeah. And so it was, it was just something really, it's just a detail, it's just a story, but I mean, it's just to show that a lot of things matter, even like having culture matters and can make a difference at a certain stage in work.
Oh, for sure. And it brings a whole new light on the kind of the cliche of like the tech nerd. Like they could be like, they're probably like great at programming, great at coding, but they probably lack social skills, right? Yeah. That's the stereotype. Yeah. And it kind of sheds a whole new light on that. And I think in this day and age, I don't know, I think the whole computer skill thing for the young generation is already a given. I can't imagine a young kid growing up these days and not like having like really good computer skills. Like I just think they all
know.
I could be wrong. Applications. Yeah, it just seems like they all already do, because that's the world they live in, right?
But you'd be surprised though, because I just started doing giving lessons at this business school, and I asked the kids, and they're like 19, 20-year-olds. And I asked them at the beginning, I did this quick quiz and everything to get to know them better, and I asked them who knows how to code, and none of them, like half of them had used like ChatGPT or Midjourney or something, but none of them knew how to code. I was a bit surprised. Like they didn't really have any knowledge of coding, so I thought that was like a given. Well,
that's a surprise.
Yeah, so I was a bit surprised about that. Out of 15 kids,
Well, that actually brings me to a question that maybe we didn't really explore yet, which is, in terms of the near future and what the workforce is going to look like, what do you think are some of the, I guess, major categories or types of jobs that may be a little more safe in the near future, as opposed to the ones like you said, the accounting or whatever, that might be displaced a bit sooner?
Well, again, like I said, the accounting could evolve to incorporate different kind of stuff based on their skills, but you have to be a flexible person and not label yourself as an accountant. You know, you have to be more open when you define yourself and what it is that you're good at. That's why you have to explore yourself and to know what you're good at, you know? So, that's a very difficult question. Again, that what you discussed about, you know, which jobs will be, because it's probably names that don't exist yet, you know? So people think of, I mean, I could tell you things that I read about that people say, okay, like with the AI, you're going to have people tasked with making sure that it's ethical and maintaining it ethical. You're going to have people tasked with explaining to human beings the results that come from the AI. Like, okay, why is it giving this kind of judgment, you know, or why is it giving this kind of result and everything? Because it's quite a black box, right? So you want to still know why, you know, did I not get the job for this, you know, that I tried to postulate for, or what, you know, it can give you things like this, and it could create jobs like this, but are these going to be high paid jobs? You know, I don't know. That's the other thing. Right now you have jobs that are created by AI that make it look like it's AI, but actually there's humans behind it. It's what you call artificial intelligence. So jobs like this could be like, well, you have the moderators. So these are people like in Kenya, for instance, who are going to be reviewing photos and videos at day's length to see like, okay, is there anything that should be censored because someone's committing suicide or someone is killing someone or something like this. You're going to have people who they're on their computers and they're just delineating objects and saying, okay, in this photo, this is a car, this is a tree and everything, so that, you know, they're helping for the whole object recognition thing to kick in. These are jobs that pay nothing. You know, they're really low paid jobs. So when you look at the future jobs, like, yes, it's going to birth new jobs, great, but are these good jobs? You know, are these high paying jobs? That's the next question.
Like, where are they getting replaced with, right? What's the quality there?
So I think that what you need to do is to be able to be good at certain things, what you're really good at, but you also need to have a better, you need to have this broader kind of skill set, minimum skills on other things. It's what in ideal they call the T expertise kind of shape thing. So something where you're really good at, but you also have this transversal, you know, skills in other areas. So you mentioned, for instance, the computer geek. The computer geek needs to have social skills too. Yeah, it's very important.
It's a generalist with specialties.
Yeah.
Right.
The social butterfly. If you're really good at people's skills, well, you know, you don't want people to just say, oh yeah, that's a social butterfly or a careerist or something, you know. No, you want to be like, okay, they remember you first for an expertise in something, and then on top of that, for the fact that you have a powerful network of people, and, you know, if they're looking for something, then you can help them out. But it's very important, again, to have a strategy, to know what it is that you want to go towards, what it is that you want to do. Because when I see people now, like the other day I was in Paris and I saw these people, you know, they just got their MBAs and everything, this couple, and the guy was like, yeah, I'm looking for a job in tech, but he wasn't more precise. And his girlfriend was like, yeah, I'm looking for a job in a cosmetics company doing this and everything. And then later, you know, it turned out that she was trilingual, English, French, Russian and everything. So it targets much more, you know, what it is that she wants to do and where she comes from and everything. And then I can think of, yeah, well, you know, I actually know like one or two Russian people that are actually, you know, looking for, you know, and I can see how to help her out.
You make those connections.
Yeah, I can make connections in my head to know what to help her out. The other guy is just like really with a blunt, you know, like, oh, I can do anything, you know, then yeah, you don't know how to help them. And you don't want to help them because you're afraid if you're going to vouch for this person that, you know, it's a bad connection that you make, then, you know, because your reputation is at stake too. So we're kind of diverging here to the whole social network kind of thing, how you use it, how you leverage it and everything. But it's also something very important to be able to do this and do it well, because then that's how you build up what could in the future, you know, because one of the paths could also be going full entrepreneur. And when you do that, then you're going to look back at your, you know, the history of your life, and you're going to be like, shit, you know, now that I need to find like backers, bankers, investors, vendors, customers, employees, partners and everything. It's too bad I didn't spend more time with those people I knew back then who worked here and there and everything. And I was being so highbrow and everything, because now, like, actually that would have been a cool thing, but now it's too late. You can't just go to someone when you need them. You want to go to them before and, you know, be nice with them and everything, so that you create this right connection kind of thing, right?
That's so interesting, the duality between like having like being very specific about like being really good at something, and also at the same time making sure you broaden your horizons in terms of, you know, kind of that T shape you're talking about, and being more like a jack of all trades, more like a Renaissance kind of perspective, Renaissance man kind of perspective. I think, you know, just from a personal standpoint, I think that was like I look back on my life now as an adult, and I feel like that's probably something I would have changed about myself.
Yeah.
Is that I feel I was too much of a jack of all trades kind of person. And I was like okay at a lot of different things. But I never had like that one thing that I was like, okay, that's my thing. Like no one can touch me on that. Like I know what the hell I'm doing. I never had that side. And that always ate at me. Like, I've always regretted that. We've had conversations about that off air. Like, and so what you're saying, I feel like really rings true. Like even like my kid when he grows up, I feel like that is something I never really thought about in that way. And now that you said it, it just makes it so much clearer and so much more vital for the future that they have that kind of like that T shape. Be really grounded and good at something, and you can be known for that thing, but also spread your wings, right? And so you have this open envelope to kind of collect more opportunities and funnel more things in your way. I just want to say I think that was really strong.
It's important when you do it, and when you do it with something that you enjoy doing, obviously, then it doesn't feel like you're a punishment, you know?
Yeah.
But to get back to your question, Howie, because I didn't really answer it, but I mean, so I don't have a crystal ball into saying like what is going to be the big jobs of the future or not or what. Now, some people do, there's people that are like tasks, it's their full-time job to do this kind of prospection and everything. So if you look in the US, for instance, you have the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have a website, which is pretty cool. They have a lot of data on there. It's really interesting. You can download it, play with it and everything. And they make projections on the 10-year horizon saying like, okay, you know, how much will the job of like an air pilot or, you know, executive manager, how will this evolve in the next 10 years? Now, of course, they don't always get it right. And it's funny, it's interesting because they also review this, you know, they also show like, okay, last year compared to 10 years ago, how far did they err down the wrong side? So no one has a crystal ball for this and we don't know, but there are other dynamics to take into account. And there's one thing which we haven't talked about, for instance, is the demographics. So the demographics are in the West and in China even are one of declining population at term. You know, now we have an aging population. We expect by 2030 to 2035 for the baby boomer generation to completely exit the workforce. And that should lead to, you know, a shrinking of the active workforce. Today in the States, it's something like 150 million people, and it's growing year on year because then you have immigration is also in the US. But at some point in certain areas, especially there where they're not really that open to immigration, these populations are going to go down. So there's also a challenge for automating in order to compensate for this loss of people working. So in China, for instance, you have 900 million workers. That's the size of the active workforce. It's projected that by 2050, there will only be 700 million workers. So if you take that delta of 200 million workers, that's bigger than the entire U.S. workforce today. And this is just jobs that will be lost between now and 2050.
That's just
right.
So then in a situation where if you're in a country or even in a world with a declining workforce, shouldn't AI be kind of like a welcome thing then?
It's really like the devil is in the details. Like what AI can do, what the people want to do, what jobs are going to be relevant and jobs are not relevant. It's really complex kind of situation. So it's not easy to really see through this. And that's why there's really no easy answers, but you do need to be aware of it. You need to prepare for it where you are. You do need to have a strategy. You do need to look forward based on where you are now, you know, and try and like anticipate and make a plan.
I think what you were saying before was enough of an answer in terms of the near future workforce or career possibilities, because like you said, there's no answer. Like nobody has that crystal ball clear reading. Nobody, right? And there may even be careers that we can't even fathom right now. Right. But there are guiding principles you can have as a person, professional person working, that can guide you, at least keep you from failing or losing perspective in the workforce. So things like you said, creating your social network, right? Updating, making sure that you're practicing social proper etiquette, right? Number two, being flexible, knowing your weaknesses and strengths, right? Flexibility in terms of pivoting, in terms of understanding what the current market's like and what the current market may need in the near future, right? These are just simple principles that you can only answer yourself, that nobody can tell you which way to go, right? But you have to kind of build it yourself, right?
And ideally, it could be like at the the crossroads between something that society needs and something that you're passionate about. I read about this example once in this book, and there was this guy, I can't remember, he was doing this job maybe like at Wall Street or something, and he was making good coin, but he was not really happy with it. And I can't remember if he was laid off, maybe he was replaced by a quant or something at some point, right? But his passion was bike riding. He's like a big bike guy, right? So he loves just going bicycle and tracking all around and everything. So he found his passion in real estate after, like the most like kind of sector you wouldn't think of, because he became specialized. He opened a real estate company. He became specialized in taking the people there. Whenever he would show them a house, he would take them, he would have bikes and everything ready, and he would take them for a bike ride all around through the neighborhood to the school where the kids would go and everything, and try to like just show them this whole thing. Yeah. It's just awesome. And because he presents himself like that. So the people that come to him are also people that, usually will have kids or they like biking too. It's like this whole biking kind of thing.
That's smart.
He became really into that. And it's like, so he's not, I don't know if he really enjoys real estate, but he enjoys the bicycle thing, and he's putting his passion into a job that he was able to develop like this. And so, yeah.
And that's a huge value add, because think about it, if you're trying to buy a house and you're a family, you want to know what the neighborhood's like. You want to know what the school district is like. Like these are all questions you all have already. Yeah. And for sure. And most realtors probably be like, oh, if you have time, take it upon yourself to go around the neighborhood.
It was a kind of a blue ocean thing that he just developed.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I want to ask a question for Howie, actually. Going back a little bit to the question that he originally asked in terms of kind of like what kind of jobs are safer. In your opinion, Ash, because you had said kind of more of the middle class routine jobs are probably the most vulnerable to AI. What about the creative sector, creative jobs? From what I at least see, what little I know, that seems like it's also really vulnerable because, like you said, with a Midjourney, you can kind of create pictures. There's all these like new ways AI is helping creatives to develop art or images or sound, music, all types of things. Motion picture. How vulnerable do you see the creative sector in general? If you're, let's say, like a filmmaker.
Well, there's a lot of aspects to that question. So first of all, like creative, you have to define what is creative, because everyone has creativity coming in point at some point. Creativity for me is about being able to solve problems. That's, tough problems. And people that you call creative, maybe they don't enter in creative in my definition, because you might have like an architect who just repeats the same old lame patterns, copy paste here, there, and everything. Some people who do that in the music industry or what, they're probably not that creative. Then
what about like a filmmaker then?
Well, then you have filmmakers or people in the advertisement agency. So then it's also like the question of like, where are they working right now? Are they working in the company as a department, or are they working like as an outsourced service where this company specializes in filmmaking or in, studio post-production or something like this? And then it touches on another question, which is like a very deep question about within the company. I'll get to the creative thing in a bit, but I mean, it touches on to the question of when you have the company, what does the company do internally and what do they do externally? And this goes way back like a century ago. This guy called Ronald Coase, I believe, he did this whole study about why company exists, but also then why the company would have employees. And his reasoning was, or what he came up with was to say like, if every time the company has a need, they had to go out into the open market to try and bargain with someone to say, okay, who can do this for them? The transaction costs are too high. So it's better for the majority of tasks that they do, especially the repetitive ones, to get employees. So that's where the employees came from. And you just give them like the standard operating procedure. And that's why most of the employees do standard recurrent tasks. Because if they didn't, then you would just go from someone from the outside if it's a one-time ad hoc thing that you have to do. And that's why we have the problem today with AI. So at the same time, what happened then is that the frontier, and later on in the 90s and everything, and Nike was one of the first to do these, Nike, one of the things that you saw was that more and more companies, they would outsource certain types of their work, and they would only keep the core stuff internally. So now you have like a lot of companies that, you know, okay, they will go outside to do their tracking of their data, or to do their social media, or to do their advertising, or to do their accounting or what. There's so many things that can be outsourced, and they only keep like a few core activities, or really like sensitive information activities, like in the finance department or what, internally, and the rest they outsource. Now that you have this Gen AI coming out, then okay, they had outsourced advertising, and the advertisers are the first ones to be using this, and they can get, you know, are they really reducing their price when they use this, or they keep charging at the same price, or they're delivering the product faster, or what? That's the question, because then the company itself is going to be like, well, wait a minute, they're just using Gen AI. If they're not using Gen AI, then that's a problem, because, hey, the other guys use Gen AI and they could do it faster than, so you have to use Gen AI. But wait a minute, if you're using Gen AI, then I can use it myself, right? So why do I need you in the first place? So there's this whole disruption as to what is the frontier between what the company should outsource and what they should do internally. And a lot of things are coming back internally now. And they're thinking like, oh, we don't have to like, you know, even before that with the iPhone and everything, why do you have to pay the hefty fee for a recording studio and a post-production and everything? And this is the job, this is the company that my stepmother does, by the way. So she's been suffering a lot from this in France, because now a lot of people, they're like, well, this phone is also a multimedia studio in itself. So the quality isn't as good. I'll give you that. But when you take into account the price difference, it's good enough. And that's the kind of problem that is going to happen for filmmakers and a lot of other professions like this. And you can see this, an early example of this is with the technology that you have before, which is not that, you know, high-end technology, but it's just the answering machine. So before, when you wanted to call a hotline, you would have, the company would have people there that would answer the phone and talk with you. And then now what you have is not full automation, but a mix of automation and outsourcing. You call the number, typically when you call the bank or something, you're going to, you know, for English, press 1, for Spanish, press 2. And then you go through this whole labyrinth of different, like, you know, numbers and everything on this backtone music. And then at the end of that, you're going to end up, if you're lucky, with someone who picks up the phone and, you know, hello, sir, you know, and he's going to be like in Bangalore or someplace like that. So it's a mix of automation and outsourcing. And it's a very unpleasant experience, but it's become the new normal. This subpar has become the new metric that everyone now is doing it now, except for a few outsiders like Zappos, the shoe company or something, you know. But I mean, the majority of people, they just go down to this level. So it's less good than before, but it's deemed good enough when you take into account the price difference. And this kind of paradigm is going to come in a lot of other areas. So for creativity, this is one of the risks that's out there. If you're like in a creative company or in an ad agency, this is one of the big risks that's out there, that they start wanting to do things on their own, you know, and bouncing ideas on their own. So maybe the company might hire someone internally to do their advertising, and it'll be cheaper than, you know, having to pay TBWA or these company, you know, these big companies. So there will still be an employee doing this if you wish, but it's going to be like at a much lesser cost, whereas before it was feeding 5 or 6 people on the other side, right? And then when you look at creativity, to get back to that topic, like, when do you actually exert creativity? You know, how often are you creative? You know, it's really challenging assumptions. It's really looking in different ways. There's a whole way to do this creativity thing, and there's not a lot of schools that actually teach that. And there's not a lot of people that actually use that. So I think a lot of the phony creative people, the fake creatives, are going to have a bit of a problem. They're going to be using this AI thing and finding it really cool, but other people are going to be finding that they can use it too, because we get back to the whole democratization thing. Yeah. So the expertise in itself goes away. Now, there is a certain level of expertise where you can do things that I think the AI might not be that good at doing, you know, like in the prompting and things like this. I can give you an example. I saw not too long ago where someone was presenting to us. It was the interior store design. So there was this big Italian fashion brand that was coming up to this design school, asking them, okay, we want you to redesign this new store that we have, you know. And I think it was Valentino or something, but that, whatever, it is an Italian fashion brand. And one student came up with this design, and it looked really nice and everything, but it was kind of bland. It was just very, you know, she played it safe, doing this whole like thing, like, you know, really in this style of the times and everything. So I said, okay, you know, yeah, that's, you know, nothing bad, nothing good. Okay. And then the second student came out and she did something that looked really different and really new and kind of weird in a sense, but at the same time, it had a touch of something kind of cozy that didn't look too off, and we couldn't really put, it was like this je ne sais quoi that was in there. And then she revealed it after to the people. She showed them a picture because there was like all these kind of like round shapes of the room and these Roman arcs and things like this. And she revealed after this photo of the ancient Roman thermal bath. And this was the inspiration actually that she used for the design of the store. So she mixed something which was a bit wacky and weird, which kind of like, if you look at what a wound curve is for creativity, it was kind of going far off of what is familiar to us. But at the same time, on this other level, by anchoring it with something in the past that,
familiar,
was something familiar in an unconscious collectiveness, then collective unconsciousness, sorry. It was bringing it back into the middle to something where, we found it quite aesthetically pleasing. And this was the one that, they went for in the end because they thought, yeah, that's pretty. And it was connecting obviously with the history of the Italian fashion brand. So this is an example, like you could prompt the AI in this direction saying like, give me something that links this to that, or give me, produce me some material that mixes, Lovecraft with, I don't know, Black Mirror and written in the style of Charles Dickens or something, right? But here it's still like there's a creative element that comes from the human. So I think that the tools are great in order to ping pong ideas with, or it prevents you from having this writer's block where you're just facing a white page and you don't know what to do. So it can get the conversation, it can get it started, especially when you're alone and you don't have anyone to brainstorm with. So ChatGPT can be fun for that. So can Midjourney and these other tools. Sorry, that's obviously the ones I use the most. I keep citing them, but I think that they still have some ways to be augmented by this technology, if you wish.
Yeah.
But there might be fewer later on, because this is going to actually help. The water's going to go down, and you're going to see who's wearing pants and who's not. And some people are going to be in trouble for sure.
It's funny. I can relate that to in the film world. Before we shot on film, and then digital video came, DV, and a lot of the old school cinematographers were very I guess not buying into DV because first of all, the quality difference, you're getting much shittier quality, especially when it first came, but it opened up the floodgates for so many people to be able to shoot quote unquote cinematic footage, right? On DV for a fraction of the price, a fraction of the technical skill, right? And that became a big conversation.
That's because whenever you have this democratization, it leads to commoditization.
Yeah. Exactly. And then what you said, I think, is so on point. It kind of separates the men from the boys. Because yes, you're going to have a flood of people using whatever this technology is or whatever, and you're going to see a boatload of shitty crap. But you're also going to see this one person from Bumblefuck all of a sudden have an opportunity. He's a genius to create this amazing piece, right? So yes, you're gonna separate the men from the boys, and I totally agree on that. There's another thing that I want to point out is the use of AI in its current form. So I know I've talked to some people that use it to directly create artwork or actual representations of their job. Personally, I don't feel like it's there yet. I don't think it can hit that level that, at least from my perspective, writing a script or creating maybe reference images, that might be okay. But in terms of like script writing, no way. Mm-hmm. But what I use it for that really helps me is I make it ask me questions to answer to get to that point. So I like what you're saying. It's like you're using that as a tool to get you somewhere. And hopefully that helps you as a creator create something that might be able to link things that you would not be able to link in that moment. And so when I was telling you that idea before we started recording, I was telling Justin that I had this idea for a concept for this series I'm making. And I was playing around with all these different ideas and it was going nowhere. And then I just prompted ChatGPT. I said, I'm kind of going nowhere right now. Ask me 10 questions to sort of streamline my thought process to get me somewhere. And also start asking me questions of like my life. What are things that I experience in life? What are my most the things that I'm most interested in? And as I was writing those out, I started linking them together. That's how I got the AI. That's how I got the, you know what I'm saying? And I linked it together and all of a sudden, whoa, I got excited. And I started like writing out this like small thesis of a statement for a film.
That's so excited.
Yeah.
So excited.
One thing that was really fascinating too before, Ash, when you were talking and I was asking a question about, we're talking about this like kind of the creative industry, right? And its impact, AI, its impact on that. It's also kind of fascinating to think about. It's true. Like even if you work in a creative field and your job is creative, like how much of that time are you truly being creative in your job, right? Versus how much of the time are you just kind of really just task oriented? Because there's a lot of creative jobs out there that also involve a lot of tedious, just task oriented things that aren't like really creative, quote unquote, right? So that's also really interesting to think about in terms of even if you are in a creative job, like the amount of time that you're actually truly being creative, where like truly an AI as of now might not be able to replace you, that portion of time might be smaller than you think about your own job. Also, to go back, AI also kind of the democratization of these tools also in a way exposes. I mean, this applies to every industry, right? I'm just picking on creatives for a second, but also exposes people or exposes a lot of the creative professions in terms of, oh, were you just relying on the tools, or was that genius inside you? Because once it's democratized, and like you said, some kid in Idaho who doesn't have any formal training in this stuff, but now that it's so easy that he's same access to the same tools that everyone else has, now his genius can be really kind of on display versus someone who might have been working in a big advertising firm or a big, creative firm, something like that, where maybe they were on the same level as that person, right? And now like everyone has that opportunity. So it kind of exposes, like you say, almost the men from the boys.
Yeah, we see this play out before. I mean, if you look at like selling things online, before, if you wanted to sell something online, you had to create the website. You had to use, Dreamweaver, Flash, or whatever. You had to be able to know how to use these tools. And then, the guys who did it well, they built Amazon and eBay and stuff like that. Today, anyone can just, you don't need any knowledge. You just create a store on WeChat or whatnot, and you can just go ahead. So who becomes the best seller now with this whole WeChat store thing? So yeah, it's just a different paradigm when anyone can do it now, no coding knowledge required. And for the creatives, yeah, it's the same thing. Like anyone can, that's where the ideas are really going to come out. It's going to focus more on this. So that's why I don't really do this distinction between creative jobs and non-creative jobs, because I think every job, like you can have there's a plasticity in it for creativity. And, you have problems in my job. I mean, if I have a problem, like, I don't know, some department, the fire department or something comes and says, oh, you have to shut the company down because who knows what. And, how do I deal with this problem? If I got people that come, they're not happy, how do you deal with it? They're not happy with their raise or what? What other strings can you play with if you can't give them money? There's got to be something else. You got to start getting creative to think about this. How are you going to deal with your competitors? How are you going to deal with situations as they arise? This is a manager's day-to-day job. You're going to have challenges, and you're going to have to be kind of creative to think about it. So as opposed to the creative job, sure, they got creative moments and everything, but I mean, it's the same as anyone. I mean, you want to know how often they're creative at it. You look at Donald Draper in Mad Men. How often does he actually have those sparks coming up? Right? It's not the whole time in every season, right? I mean,
versus how often is he just drinking and getting on chicks?
Yeah.
Do you ever think about just kind of pivoting for a little bit, because I know we're really focusing on the present right now, but let's go to that next step that I mentioned earlier, which is a little bit more in the future now.
The fun stuff.
Yeah. And now it becomes a little bit more opinions, and we're just shooting the shit, right? Just having some fun with this a little bit. A little speculation here. So, I mean, let's call it the post-labor economy, right? Where the emergence of AGI and automation displaces the majority of the workforce. We're in that reality. So what do you think that means? Have you thought about it? Like, what do you think that means for society, and what are some of the big changes that we would probably have to face because of this? Do you ever think about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't spend too much time on that, because like you said, it's so like crazy that it's kind of hard to like really think about anything. And so it's not, you got to choose your battles, right? So I could always just, throw out some thoughts about that. But I mean, again, if you have this, suppose you have this working in the US or something, how does that erode the US's competitiveness in the world. You know, if other places people are working and in the US you're not working. Suppose you have this everywhere in the world. Okay, is there really going to be enough money created by this to support everyone, or is it only going to support people in Western countries? I mean, there's some dynamics that are not really taken into account when they do this. But let's just say for a minute that we forget about this and we try and focus, okay, if we don't need to work anymore, what will people do? It's an interesting question because, you know, you always think like, okay, work is not just there for getting money. It's also to keep you busy, to keep your neurons running and all that, even though for some people
it's also the identity.
It's for the identity.
Right.
Today, if you ask, what do you do? You know, and I hate having to answer with a job title, but that's what people do these days. Yeah. So what's going to happen in a world where you no longer answer with a job title? What could it be? It could be something creative if you have that kind of penchant, you know, like, oh, well, I paint and I do, you know, whatever I like to do. And there were so many things that I would like to do. But you always think of the things that you would love to do because you don't have the time to do it. But then when you suddenly do have a lot of time, do you actually do those things, you know? Your kind of morale kind of goes down when you have nothing, you know, and you don't have this status thing and everything. So maybe we need a complete reset on where the status comes from. And it can be from something else, from like, you know, if I do oil painting or something, but I post about it and I'm like in this, there's these competitions and everything for who does the best one. And if I win like the sixth prize or something, then that's something that I can be proud about, you know, but you need something to have the status come up. And, so there could be things like that. I'm sure there's still going to be work necessary in research. So if we could direct more people going towards research, towards R&D and, you know, developing new stuff, then we can become a more advanced society. And there's a long ways to go there. I mean, you know, you could have like you know, when you have like the Dyson sphere and things like this, I mean, these kind of science fiction ideas, like, you know, why don't we go towards that direction, you know, to become, you know, to colonize the solar system and beyond, you know, there's so many things that are imaginable, you know, so many problems that have yet to be dealt with in physics and quantum physics and I mean in quantum mechanics at the very small level or in the larger levels, you know. So there's like just so many things that could be done, and it's a pity that we can't focus on those problems because we're too busy, like, you know, producing food and you know, making toys and making, you know, things that, you know, like that we have to spend our time on because there's no machines doing this for us. So there's like so many things that you could think about that we could be able to do, but for sure it needs to be organized, because or else we're just going towards straight chaos, because people are going to be like, okay, there's nothing to do. What next? So there was this funny story actually by Li Kai-fu with Chiu Chu-fan or something. They did like this half science fiction, half you know, kind of analysis thing about the future. I think it's called AI 2042 or 2046 or something. Right, yeah. And there was one of the stories where this is exactly what happened. There was no longer a need for work, so the government introduced universal basic income. And what happened after a few months or years was it was total chaos with rights and everything, because people were bored shitless, you know. They had nothing to do. So what they eventually did, they eventually reintroduced work where people were actually working. They were doing this in VR, so they would put a helmet on and they would be working on this like construction site or something to build something in some far-flung country. And so everyone had a job to do using the helmets and everything, like to do some, you know, job that was necessary in some other place. And what people found out, actually, some people found out, was that actually there was no work going on anywhere. They were just doing this in VR, but
keep them busy.
But everyone thought it was real, and there was like this whole like stick and carrot kind of thing to help them, you know, to see like who's performing the best and everything. So it's just to keep them busy, but also like keep their status and keep them proud about doing something, you know.
Yeah. I was like the Matrix.
Yeah, I was exactly thinking because so like, okay, if everybody was out without a job, and we just already established that a lot of times our career or occupation or job is our identity to many people, right? Now, if you lose that, then I started thinking it's almost like coinciding with the advent of virtual reality. I mean, also augmented reality to a certain extent, but extended reality. And it's almost like that social currency becomes metaphysical, right? So whatever happens in that virtual world, if you're building, you know, construction in Sudan or wherever, or you are a warrior on top of a mountain, like a massively multiplayer or online role playing game, right? And your statistics as this brave warrior, becomes your identity, because you're not working, right, but you still need to have some sort of social currency, right? In your tribe and beyond. So what is that currency then? If it's not, I'm not a filmmaker, but you know what? I'm a level 60 like warrior,
Exactly,
and that is me.
But it could be related to passion. So if your passion is fishing or whatever, then it's about the biggest fish you got, even if it's in VR.
Yeah,
you know?
even if it's VR.
Yeah. Well, it's all psychological, right? Because like what you're saying, and I've been down that rabbit hole of video games too, where you identify so much with your character or your profile in this game, and you are just like truly like proud of that person, right? Like when you achieve something or you have a high ranking, like it affects you just like it would in the real world, quote unquote.
Oh, yeah.
So it's totally psychological. Yeah. So like that's.
But don't you feel like it's funny? Like both paths are kind of growing. They're both expanding and growing and advancing at the same, like in the parallel.
Well, it's a possibility that the metaverse becomes so enmeshed with our reality that it's just the line becomes blurred. You know, because so it's not like now I know how much time I spend on the phone per day or something, but later you won't know because you just have the helmet on, you turn it on or not, and yeah, it could be like. So it's no longer like it's the same. The line between a video game, the classical thinking video game is for kids, and then you have work. Well, this line is going to be blurred too, and it's going to be like, okay, what you call video game no longer called like this anymore because work has become a game also, and game has become a work or something. It's going to be a completely meshed. And
well, like what is reality at that point, right? Like how do you even where is there a line between the realities anymore in that phase?
Well, because if it gets to the point where most of the workforce is replaced by automation and AI or robotics, even from a corporate level, I mean, if most of the society, the population is busy in their virtual world, no skin off their game, because if they're very focused on whatever they're doing, it's probably going to make only a few huge companies in the world or something like that.
Oh, but I mean, it's possible that we have like different ways of getting, so you could have like a basic, universal income or something. And then on top of that, you get points or income based on different things that you do, either because you're very good at this a shooter game or because you're very good at fishing, but different things. Also because you do gym, you do sport, you run, you keep physical activity. Based on your physical activity, you will get a salary also, because that means you're less costly to society later on in life. So there's a lot of different elements that could be taken in account. And also what you do when you post something, how many influencers do you have and everything. There's a digital currency there to have based on, if you're going to post something about perfumes or something, maybe you're not going to get any money off that. But if you post something on dogs and cat food or something, maybe you will, because you have a lot of followers who also have dogs and everything, and you're like a big on dogs or something like this. So based on what you are, and this is something that could be backed by blockchain. So this is something that there's been studies that have been done, and they say, oh, based on this, if you got money based on your Facebook post or something, it would be just small fractions of a penny, so it makes nothing. But that's because we're looking at the current situation. Exactly. But when you got the metaverse, and every single movement you do, every breath you take, every move you fake is going to be like recorded and seen, and it can be like measured and tracked, then you were at a whole different
You could throw a monetary value to every single move you make.
Yeah. Based on who looks and who's interested in you.
And the whole system would be super optimized to marketing. Like you wouldn't like just tracking like who the people are watching, if there happen to be dog owners or pet owners. Like everything would be so super optimized.
Yeah. Because I feel like, so one thing was that identity. When I asked the original question about this post-labor economy, one was that identity, right? But second was that was on my mind is what is currency? What is going to be money? Cash value in the future in this situation, because it could change, right?
So right now everyone says that data is the new gold, right? Data is the new gold. It's the new black oil or whatever. And if that's the case, then we all generate data. And our data has different values based on how many friends we got, how many, followers we got, or whatever you want to call them. So based on what data you generate, you should get money. You should be the one getting this. Why is it going to these like Facebook or whatever? That's like total crime there. That's like a big problem that should be solved at some point. And I think it will be solved eventually, because you're going to have privacy rights. So it's like, oh, they're not allowed to use your data, including your shadow data, which you're going to, be emitting tons of once you're in the metaverse. But you can give it to them if, you know, in exchange of a monetary compensation. So there's going to be this deal that's going to happen where, okay, they can't use your data unless you agree to it in exchange for compensation. And what is going to determine this transaction cost? It's going to be based on an algorithm which tracks, you know, your value, and your value is going to be different again, whether you're using, you know, showing off perfume or what, based on, you know, who your followers are. So if you're walking out, and this is going to be an O2O thing too, you know, if you're walking out on the street and based on how many people see you wearing those super cool Nike shoes, and then they look into their own thing and want to say, okay, you know, I'm going to store that in my own thing and in my own virtual wardrobe, and maybe one day I'll actually want to buy it or license it for myself, you know, whatever the payment will be back then you could get a small part of that income because you're the one who branded this out to them. You know, you're the one who was like showcasing it, and that's just an example, but it could be a lot of stuff, you know, about your achievements, about whatever you do, you know.
But it kind of almost sounds like a pyramid scheme too. Right? Like you show, and then they show, and then like all the money, like everyone gets a commission off of all the
but
all
you do this kind of seamlessly because it'll be so small a part of income that, you know, if you it's like really builds up on based on a lot of stuff. So some people, but I'm just saying, like right now, it's just not fair because you have like a handful of KOLs who are getting all the money, and the tech companies that are getting all the money, and everyone else you're just getting free likes and stuff on the internet. Which,
you know, it's funny. It's almost so I recently got a Neo. And once you get into their ecosystem,
the car, you mean?
The car, yeah. Once you get into their ecosystem, so on their app, first of all, they have a store, so you can buy a lot of products that are Neo products, even food actually, and it has a cash value and it has Neo points next to it, which is the value of 10% of the dollar. Now, basically, you can accumulate points by checking in. You can also accumulate points by sharing on social media, by going to certain events and then sharing a photo from the event, and there's different values to those points. And a lot of people do it because they can exchange that,
redeem it
for actual products. And because there's a cash value to those points, the point actually has value, you know, and as a digital currency, pretty much, right? Now, using that as, you know, let's multiply that to this new future where every little thing you're doing, and it's not just one brand, it's everything you do in life is monetized. And that money is almost like the US dollar, which is universal, that could be used to buy many different things. I like that concept. I don't like it in terms of I think that should come to life, but I like it because it makes sense. And I think that it is a possibility.
I don't like it in terms of the fact that it means that you have to share, you know, in order to make a living. Yeah. But I mean, it's one way to go. There could be other things too. You know, if you win like tournaments or something, like, you know, for painting or for driving a racing car or for whatever, you know, whatever the passion is. But you can focus more on passions, you know, instead of on work. So everyone has passions, right? I mean, things that they like to do, and it could be something more related to this, you know, whatever the people like, you know. There's always going to be like aficionados for a certain thing, you know, and with the internet it can be like the most quirky thing, but you're still going to find people that have common, you know, like-minded people, and you can gather with those people even if you got distance and everything. With VR it's going to be more immersive, so there's a lot of things that can happen. Then these people can decide, okay, we're going to start, you know, putting money into this or something, and, you know, whoever wins this thing, then they get the money, or something. You know, it's like there's always things that can happen within communities.
Do you think more people should be worried or having this type of conversation
about AI and jobs?
Yeah, just future.
Well, he wrote a book on it, so I would think you would want more people.
Well, why I'm asking is that I feel like most people around me they don't really think about it.
I think in China there's quite a conversation about this. In the past year, I've seen, I publish in March, and ever since I start, you know, doing like some conferences and stuff. And at the beginning, I usually ask, okay, who's worried about their job or what? And you'd have, you know, there's more and more hands that rise up each time now, you know, and I'm talking not just, you know, like the accounts payable person. I'm talking like, you know, consultants at McKinsey and stuff like this. They're also worried because now the people, they could just query ChatGPT to get their whole strategy. And I've heard people in big companies telling me, you know, so the public companies where there's information online, and when they query ChatGPT on, you know, what should our strategy be for next year or something, they say, you know, it comes up with pretty much 80% right. You know, like we take some of the stuff in there, we copy paste some of the snippets for our, you know, our board of directors or whatever, when you do our master plan for the next couple of years, you know, so it's not, you know.
Well, especially with GPTs now, I mean, what we can see what GPTs can do, not ChatGPT, but GPTs, right? Yeah. Especially if you formally train it properly. I mean, that's what I did. I trained the Honest Drink GPT, trained it with some of our basically transcripts from our
So
shows.
what's the difference between a GPT and a chat GPT?
Do you want to take it?
The GPT is more, it's the technology in itself that's under there. The chat GPT is just what the OpenAI came up with. That's
like their
one
brand
product.
of okay.
It's like their product. But the GPT basically, it's like you give it a lot of the big data sets, and then it's the large language model thing that then it learns from and everything, and it produces something based on this.
Okay, so it's all the same thing except ChatGPT is just OpenAI's branded product.
And GPT, you it's basically a dumbed down version. You don't have to be a coder to be able to train a GPT. Yeah.
And also just to clarify, because you guys were using this lingo before, and I think I know, but so AGI is what is that again?
Human level intelligence.
So that's human level intelligence. So that's different than super.
That goes beyond.
ASI.
That goes beyond.
ASI is something like in the future, hypothesized.
ASI is intelligence which is superior to ours.
Superior.
So I can go from AGI to ASI in the blink of an eye. We don't know where the frontier
we don't know. Yeah,
because once AGI is established, then
why does it stop there?
Yeah, we don't know where the event horizon is.
Well, basically. That's what I mean. A lot of experts have talked about the problem that a lot of us as human beings we have an issue with being able to visualize or even comprehend the technological advancement scale. Right, like we look at it in terms of time and
the exponential rate.
Yeah, it's the exponential rate. But we look at it in terms of like the way we view time. But in actuality, the 1x, the 10x, the 100x, etc. The way it multiplies that speed, it's so incredible that we can't really compute it.
We can't conceive it.
Yeah.
You know? And so it doesn't make sense to us.
It's like the Big Bang. It's like an explosion. Like there was nothing and then there's everything.
Yeah, but it's factual in the grand scheme of things in terms of translated towards time. It makes sense, but for us, it's like no, it doesn't make sense because we don't fathom that 10x, what 100x. What does that mean?
Right.
You know?
And that's why when you see the technology expanding at a rapid clip, the companies are not really taking up the full the full measure of this, and they're not really like harnessing it at the best that they can. So there's a gap between what the technology enables us to do and what governments are doing and companies are doing, because they're a bit slower. First you have the really like those that are at the vanguard who are going to be doing it, then the companies will follow, and then the governments are going to be last. With legislation, I mean, they're the slowest.
They're so slow.
So I see this for the employees again. Getting back to the topic, I see this like as an opportunity for them because the company, like there's all these new cool tools that are out and the company hasn't used them efficiently 100% yet within the company, or else, there's probably like 30% of the guys who would be gone already. So this is the moment for the employees to shine. So if you're there in your office cubicle and you got this technology available, you should use it right away to see how it can make you a better worker before your company snoops in and looks at what you're doing and then says, and then you can be the one who spearheads the change and, faster than the guys in the other cubicles beside you. And then you become like the herald for change within the company, and you can show them like, yo, look at what we can do with GPT. We can improve our the operations at our front office. We don't need to be such to have these people that have 6 years experience or what to be able to respond to a customer request. We can just have this and or we can do whatever kind of changes to get better customer data because AI does more than just automating stuff. It could also help you in different ways in the business. It can help you with internal controls. It can help you on a lot of different aspects. But if you show this and you show this to your company that you're the guy out there who knows your business, whether if you're in marketing, for instance, how marketing works, but you also know how the tech works and you're using it, then they might put you in touch with tech people in the company if they have them. And if they don't, they'll find maybe some people from the outside or like consultants or something, but you'll be the ones working with them and you can kind of like steer the game on your own terms and, just make sure you have a job at the end of it, that you're still valuable for the company.
Well, you increase your value.
You increase your value.
Yeah. You guys stay up to date.
And you buffer yourself, right? It's like that protection you're talking about.
But don't you feel like so this is a thought that I have in my head because I personally try to keep up to date with what's going on. But at the same time, I'm not a programmer. I'm not that deep. I just like to know what's going on and play with some of the tools so I know how to use it if I need it. The only thing that I feel like it could feel a little bit overwhelming is the rapid change that keeps happening. So how deep can you go? The only reason why I feel like I can go deep is because I'm not as busy as I used to be. But if I was as busy as I was before, I would not be able to keep up to date.
I'm totally overwhelmed. It's not possible to keep up to date. It's just impossible. There's just so much stuff every day. Like I'm in these group chats and stuff, and I just see this stuff like coming out all the time on LinkedIn and everything. And because obviously my post is a bit like tweaked towards this kind of news and everything. And there's just these plugins, these new things, this new spaces and everything. It's just like it's just impossible to keep up to date with everything that's going on and to keep on your day job, like you say, and everything. But I mean. Yeah, I
feel so overwhelmed.
Yeah. Like, it's going very fast.
Daunting.
There's been a crazy acceleration this year, so yeah, it's really hard to make sense out of the noise.
This past month has been ridiculous.
Once right after recording this podcast, where it's going to be irrelevant. This whole conversation. It's like, once we leave the studio, it's going to be like, okay, so it's all irrelevant.
So last week, Justin and I were recording, and that was when the whole open AI fiasco was happening. And I was following it real closely, and I was like, I don't want to talk about it because it's going to be so out of date. Yeah. And like news like this kind of stuff is just going to be old news real quick.
Well, from a personal level, Ash, writing a book called AI Battle Royale. What's your personal level of concern? In the short term.
From myself and my job, or
just you?
Yeah, just your general, like your personal outlook
for people. You mean?
Yeah, just for people.
Well, I think it's quite bleak.
Yeah,
it's quite bleak. And again, I'm not the doomsayer saying that we're all going to lose our jobs and it's going to be massive unemployment. I don't really believe that at the short term. Maybe at a very long term, but I don't think that that's going to happen. Right away. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a lot of disruption happening, and a lot of people that. They might still have a job, but it might not pay as well as the job that they had before, and they might need to get a second job and a third job, and work with like 3 part-time jobs or something. So there's a lot of different ways that people are going to be disrupted. And I mentioned some of them. So I mentioned the case of, democratization, augmentation, and, replacement and everything. At the very long term, in the second phase, when the technology, as you said, it keeps on improving and everything, then you get to a second phase where it's no longer complementing labor, it's substituting for human labor. That's the later stage, and this has happened for some jobs already. If you look at the a tollway cashier or something, or a parking cashier, these are monotask jobs which were quite easy to automate. Certain cashiers in grocery stores now are being automated. Again, not all
factory
of them.
workers.
Factory workers are being automated, obviously, but I don't like focusing on factory workers because people always focus on them, and that's never been more than like 30% of the workforce at most. And I'm more concerned with office jobs because these are the ones. Well, these are with an algorithm, it's easier to scale up than with robots, and for cheaper cost. So yeah, it's my outlook is not really that great on the market, but again, it really depends where you're at. If you're 50 years old, if you're already executive level, or if you're just a fresh graduate, it's a very different story.
Well, talking about age in terms of, can you put just for my own clarity, just a general timeline? So you kind of mentioned first stage, second stage, right? First stage is kind of more the disruption of labor and jobs. Second stage is when it actually fully starts replacing jobs altogether. First stage, second stage, in terms of years, like what are we looking at? What does that look like?
Depends on the jobs.
Okay.
It depends on the jobs. And even when I talk about full replacement, it's not necessarily the AI fully replacing. There could still be a part of labor, but it could go to someone else. It could be outsourced to someone, or to an intern that has, or a gig, or to the customer. Like we said at the cashier, now it's the customer who has to scan this stuff themselves,
But like ballpark, I know it depends on a specific job, but I would think the difference would be maybe a matter of, a few years between jobs or whatever. Like ballpark figure, are we talking about decades from now? Are we talking about just a few years from now? Are we talking within our lifetime, after our lifetime? What's the scale here?
There's different possibilities. So at the beginning of the book, I actually did a chart where you see the historical unemployment in the US, and you see, okay, what would it be like to reach what you said, like the tipping point scenario, what I call it, like when we reach something like 25 or 30% unemployment based on an increase average per year of 1%, 2%, or 0.5%. And it gives you to timelines, which are like around 20, something like it was either 40 years, 30 years, or I think like 10 or 15 years or something. So it gives you like different timelines. And this is like your assumption that you can go with. and then knowing that obviously it's not going to be linear, it could just be like very stable for a certain amount of years, and then suddenly it's going to shoot up or something, so like it did during COVID. And again, there's the technology doing this, but there's other factors too. You have the financial crisis or COVID. This got a lot of people fired, so that you would say like, yeah, it's because of this, but actually at the same time, a lot of the people didn't come back later. That's also because of technology, like we had the example with the bankers. So technology can be hiding under something else, like a macroeconomic, like sudden factor that happens, like a war or something, but a lot of the people don't come back. It could be due to technology. So when you have this kind of like framework of, okay, how long is it going to take? And then you see, okay, so this is how long you have to keep your head out of the water. Because by the time you reach 25% unemployment or something, you could expect like maybe the government will come up with something to avoid total chaos.
Kind of have to.
They kind of have to.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to go with that assumption. So then the question becomes, how do you keep your head out of the water for that long? How do you survive for the next 20 years, the next 10 years or what? And so you have this, and then whenever you see a new technology come out, like a generative AI or whatever, you don't have to panic or anything all of a sudden like they do in the news. You just have to like integrate this new data into your hypothesis and see how that changes the curve line and how that changes your assumption. And then it changes your battle plan. Okay, now I have to, I have to be able to survive, like taking this into account for the next number of years. So that's kind of like how you play the game. It's for everyone to make up what they are, because it's depending about the job, and sometimes you're going to be like, okay, this job is really not working, for me. So maybe a monotask job in particular is very risky, because if it becomes automated, you're left with nothing to do. And then you have to see, okay, it's better that some cases you want to abandon ship. And some people have told me, actually, the title of the book isn't that great because it's how to protect your job, but sometimes to protect yourself, you have to switch jobs. There's just sometimes you have to be really clear about that. There's certain jobs you can get promoted and you can like climb the ladder. Certain jobs, you can't really. If you're a nurse or something, and I'm not saying a nurse is a job. I think a nurse is a pretty long-term stable job, but if you're a nurse, you can't just be promoted to doctor all of a sudden like that. It just doesn't happen. There's different qualifications involved.
Yeah. So sometimes depending on the job and situation, you might have to jump ship entirely, right?
You can, you're going to have to rebrand yourself and find something else to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, even just think about in 2000, when was it? When Andrew Yang was running. Was that 2016
or something?
Was it 16? Was it 16?
I'm bad with
dates. So, and his whole thing was UBI, remember?
Yeah.
And talking about in fear of the
job displacement.
Yeah, job displacement for truck drivers, right? With robotics, not robotic, but automated self-driving cars. And now we're 7 years later. We're still not there yet. No. But it's getting close, right? And the Tesla truck has been.
It seems it's inevitable at this point.
Well, yeah, but automated driving is getting there.
Well, just the entire logistics industry.
Yeah, it's getting there, right? And I mean, even me, when I'm driving my car and I put on the autopilot, it's like, it's pretty interesting, But anyway, the point is, it's getting there, because once it gets there, what is there? When it becomes safe enough that government approval has said, okay, yes, it's allowed on the streets, right? Once that hits,
no more jobs. So
it's gone. Yeah. So it's literally like, it's that exponential curve, right? So the whole time it's kind of hovering down here. You're like, yeah, it's not really, nothing's really happening. But once that technology hits,
but that's just one job.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a job that I really don't like, that people are always taking it as an example, because it's really, I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it's a very special kind of job, which is different from most other jobs. Why? Because there's only one person in that truck.
Yeah.
So it's either there's a worker or there's no worker, but that's just specific to the truck driver. So you have to automate it 100%. Yeah. There's no middle ground. But for other kind of jobs, and again, what I said is not true, and I'll give you an example in a minute, but for the majority of other jobs, if you're working in an office, if you're working in a factory, if you're working at a restaurant, if you're working at a hair salon or whatever, you're not the only one there. So it's like, okay, maybe, where we have 5 staff today, maybe tomorrow we can only do with 2 or 1 staff, so it's very different from the truck driver, where there's all this middle ground. And for the case of the truck driver, we can see this already, because it's not allowed to have like the autonomous truck, but you can have a truck which is remotely controlled. And we have this, I don't have the name of the company now, but there's a Swedish company who arrived in the US, and they took one truck driver and they put her in the office at the headquarters. And now she's monitoring 10 different screens, 10 different trucks that have no driver. She's driving them like remotely. They're all like on auto mode, and sometimes she'll take over if ever there's an obstacle or if ever you have to do a specific action. But basically you have one person now there where there were 2 truck drivers before. So this again is the case. It's kind of like what I was talking about, assisted reality, where we were talking about before. But in this case, it's just someone remotely controlling trucks. So
and they can instantly shift people because it's just 24 hours.
Well, it's also like the complexity of the job, right? Like so even like take. I don't know, let's say like the hairstylist like you brought up, right? Like their job might not only be to cut hair, but they might have to look after the store. They might have to do a lot of maintenance things around the store, clean up and do some sales or like do some PR or whatever it is that a hair salon requires. Whereas a truck driver in that example really only has one task, get from point A to point B. There is no other task there. Right? It's not complex. I mean, I'm not a truck driver. I wouldn't know, but it seems like it's pretty direct. Just point A to point B. That's all you have to do. Whereas many other jobs have all these other tasks that are built into the main mission as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh man, there's just you're right. There's just so much to think about.
Yeah, we can literally talk about this.
I've only talked for a lot about, but I mean, some of the safe jobs, obviously, like a hair cutter is a kind of safer job, a gardener, because these are cheap. Some of these jobs are quite cheap too, so it doesn't make sense to use a robot. Jobs where safety is involved.
Yeah, it'd be more expensive to use a robot in these jobs.
If you use an air, the air hostess job, or is it more correct to say air host? Anyways, the job on the airplane, there you're like, you got life and death scenarios, you got people that you need to keep comforted and everything. Small, cramped space, dexterity is important and everything. This will never be automated.
That's definitely farther away.
That's further away. You can never automate
because
this.
That has to do with robotics.
You can automate small parts of this, and they do already. Like some other tasks have been automated. The task of showing them, like, before you would have the air hostess in the middle of the aisle showing you what to do, how to put the mask and everything. Now they use a video to do this, right? So that's been automated. Now, if you need something, maybe some of the parts will be automated too, but some of the things you'll still need to have a few air hostesses, maybe less than before. They probably reduce the number of staff on there. The pilot himself, right now, I think their law is like you have to have 3 pilots on the plane or something. Maybe it varies per country, but I heard about 1 pilot and 2 co-pilots. Maybe you could like reduce that a bit. I mean, the autopilot has been there for a long time, right? But you're always going to have to keep at least 1 on the plane because the fear factor, people are not going to want to go on the plane. But this is just, again, it's playing with people's psychology, and this can change very fast. You think people, you think like, okay, should we not use a robot police force and have, get rid of policemen? And people will be like, oh no, that's scary, because you think about all these like Terminator movies and everything. But then when you see like what the cops are doing when they're shooting people and everything without, because they're afraid for their life or something, so they just shoot and ask questions after. Well, then you think, okay, well, at least a robot wouldn't fear for its life. It's going to be, think twice before
it wouldn't like be
someone.
rash
Right.
and make an emotional decision out of fear.
Right. So I heard that San Francisco now is experimenting and that they start having like this sort of like drone or robot police force or something in San Francisco.
Oh shit!
I don't think American people will ever put up with that though. They'll get so much pushback there. I think precisely because of what you're saying. It's that image of like this like this group of Terminators.
Yeah, but
like,
so you got that on one side.
Get robots guns? Hell no.
Yeah, but then you got George Floyd on the other side. So you got one image fighting against the other, and at one point they might just change. So I take the example of the elevators before. You always had a guy in the elevator back in the days. So they invented automated elevators back in the 1880s, and then you didn't have to have a guy in the elevator to, the elevator boy. Yeah. But the problem is people were afraid to take elevators. So they wanted to have an elevator boy in there for their safety. And then the elevator boys, when they were pissed, sometimes they with their pay or what, they would go on strike. And then, you'd have to take the stairs. And then what happened after they had the skyscraper revolution. And then when they go on strike and you have to go up 30, 40 floors, that's no longer an option. So people really got pissed with the elevator boys. They started accepting elevators without the boys. And that job just became... disappeared. It vanished after that. So this is the kind of example, so you see, like you talk about the trucks, for instance, when in France, it's a classic when the guys are pissed, the truck drivers, they block the major roads in France and everything, and it pisses off everybody. Same when there's a strike in the subway, people are really pissed. You can't take the subway anymore. Now there's like 1 or 2 lines in Paris that are automated, and whenever there's a strike, those are the 2 only lines that are running. What do you think that's imprinting in people's minds? They're thinking like, well, why don't we automate the rest of them, And so these people that are going on strike, they're really not doing themselves a favor by doing that, because people are seeing like there's an option now, there's an alternative where you can go just for a fully automated solution and get rid of these disgruntled workers.
It's not if, it's just when. It's just when. That's all it comes down to.
Oh man.
There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot that we can talk about, and I feel like we're just scraping the surface here.
Yeah, I used to always give like Howie so much shit for like coming in all doom and gloom about AI and be like, what are you going down those rabbit holes for? And now I totally get it. Like I get it. Like after having you on today, Ash, like I have a new level of appreciation, I think, for the situation that we're all in collectively.
And again, we're just talking about work here.
Yeah,
we didn't even get into the other
We're just
stuff.
getting one little spoke of the entire wheel, right?
You're exactly right. And I just want to reiterate, I think I said this before, but I just want to reiterate. I was doom and gloom. And because I went down that path, and this is when ChatGPT 3.5 first started coming out, and before 4. Right around when 4 was about to come out. That's when I was my apex of doom and gloom. When Gregory Hinton left Google, and you had what's that guy named?
The Ebenezer guy.
Jeffrey Hinton.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
Sorry, Jeffrey Hinton. Yeah. Basically, you had a lot of these people coming out and basically spitting that doom and gloom story, and I was buying it. But now, after really listening and thinking and living it, I'm also feeling a little bit bleak about the future, but I also realize that I can't just sit back and be like doom and gloom. That's it. I have to do something about it. And knowing that in the near future, I am still in control of my fate. I'm still in control of my path until that long future. Well, I don't know about long, but that second phase comes. Until that comes, I got to do something about now. Right. And what does that mean? It means being flexible. It means understanding my current situation. It means being up to date with technology. It means speaking to other people that are also following this. I feel like that is the right way to think.
Yeah. Like, well, I think like to Ash's book, it's also like, let's take accountability for ourselves where we can.
Because things are happening. Okay. You cannot deny that, and you cannot stop it. So what are you going to do about it? You're not just going to tangping, in the Chinese way.
You are responsible for your own education.
Yeah. Exactly.
No one else.
I agree.
That's a perfect way to leave it right there. Ash, man. Thank
Guys,
you.
Awesome. This is a lot more fun doing it in physical as opposed to like,
Right?
on a Teams screen or something.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
This is why I refuse to do any remote podcasts anymore. I need to get them in. They need to be in Shanghai. They need to be in our studio. Honestly, this is the only way I feel to have a conversation now is face to face.
100%.
Nice.
Preferably with a drink. Cheers, man.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
All right. That was Ash. I'm Justin.
I'm Howie.
All right. Be good. Be well. Peace.